speaking of royal wedding, I mean, you're English, you must be really excited about the royal wedding.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I don't.
Come on.
I don't really.
You gotta be.
Really?
Look, he's a Brit. He's marrying an American girl. You're British. You married an American woman. You got any tips for him?
I would not blame her if she pulled out of this at the last minute. I don't think you need to have just seen the pilot episode of The Crown to get a basic sense of she might be marrying into a family that could cause her some emotional complications.
But this generation seems like nice people, right? They're all nice now, right?
Yeah. I mean, they're an emotionally stunted group of fundamentally flawed people doing a very silly pseudo job. That's what she's marrying into. So I hope she likes it. It's going to be weird for her. I would not marry into the royal family. I'm a commoner. I would not be welcome, especially after what I've just said.
Killing the mood.
I guess.
This is like, we're all doomed. This marriage is never going to last.
You just
it's a complete
fights,
fiasco.
don't you?
I didn't write your piece.
I started by saying... It started by saying I wish them all the joy, didn't I?
But then he went on to say,
and then I said, get away, Meghan, don't do it.
You said this is not a dreamy fairy tale.
It's not.
Most crowns are made of thorns as well as diamonds.
Wow.
She cannot possibly understand what she's getting into. The Windsors are a cold and dysfunctional family.
I fear I do believe that.
Really?
I do believe that. I do believe that. I mean, look at the examples. Not just Diana, but even going back to Princess Margaret. I remember Princess Margaret when she had to sign her love away. It was a rainy day, I remember it very well. And she never really recovered, did she? Because she couldn't marry a divorcee.
That's true, she didn't.
Yeah?
But life has changed. The royals have changed. But
I love the boys. The boys seem very normal to me. But what I really think, especially if it seems she's not even going to carry on with her career, it will be a nightmare. Because the official rules and regulations... I mean, even Kate, you know, I'm not a royalist, but I do sort of look at these, at Kate. She had personality once. They've taken it away somewhere.
What do you want us to do? Get on the roof and start dancing?
I think Diana had it, and that's why Diana was so unwelcome.
Well,
the royal family would have had an idea for who would be the perfect bride for Prince Harry. Meghan Markle couldn't be any more different. She's American, she's a divorcee,
and she's half black.
It's a recipe for, well, we'll see.
I'm sure that when the courtiers found out that this woman existed, all the alarm bells rang at Buckingham Palace, and I could almost hear them saying, pull the shutters down. It's an invasion. All the things that frightened the royal family have suddenly arrived on their doorstep. I can hear Diana laughing now.
It's time to move on. Things are changing.
The first time ever there's a mixed-race person marrying into the royal family.
And on May 19th, there'll be a wedding that will change the royal family forever.
Harry and Meghan's wedding is like no other wedding.
I think it's modern, it's young, it's now.
Oh, I've got goosebumps.
Things are changing. She's modernizing the royal family.
I think that's great.
It's so exciting that for the first time ever there's a mixed-race person marrying into the royal family.
You gotta remember, not only is she marrying the royal family, but Harry is marrying her family. He's gonna get a mother-in-law that's black with dreads. Yes! Are we changing or what?
Family have never had a black member. Let's just put that out there. Now we have the first ever mixed race royal bride. And that's a big deal.
The fact that there's now an interracial relationship within the British royal family is hugely significant and something that should be celebrated.
I think they're showing that it is outdated and they're ready to change and everybody wants to embrace this change.
Bringing diversity to the royal family and breathing a breath of fresh air. You know, I think that this is going to keep them going even longer. I really do.
Now that they have opened their doors to her, certain members of her future family will have to tread carefully.
Meghan's marrying into a family which has, to put it mildly, a dodgy track record of race, and one of the leading culprits is Princess Michael of Kent.
Princess Michael of Kent is married to the Queen's cousin and has a reputation for causing controversy.
She was at a restaurant in New York and she was having dinner, and there was a group of rowdy people next to her who were Afro-Caribbean, and she rather snootily yelled at them, "Go back to the colonies." I mean, that sort of language and behaviour is totally unacceptable.
So, do you all think the royals are ready to have like a black princess?
No.
No?
The grandmother's not.
The grandmother's not?
No, 100% she's not. I think they're very old school. But
Okay.
I think, first of all, it's amazing.
Yes.
It's a beautiful story, and it's time.
Yes.
Can you imagine if you be Harry and I'm gonna be the Queen Elizabeth, since I got this on, right? And you telling me about your girlfriend? Okay. Hello, Harry.
Grandmother, I met this beautiful woman, and she just happens to be mixed race.
Oh my God. That's how you think she would react?
I was not ready.
I wasn't ready either.
I wasn't ready, but yes.
That's the reaction you
And
think
some
she
of
would
her
have.
dentures probably would have came out. But can I say,
you live in London
I think
too, yeah.
I think it's okay for him because he's always been the black sheep. So
Yeah.
you know.
Oh my God, I just got it.
So and living in London, there's so many mixed babies and couples
Very
and
common.
races
Yeah.
and I think it's cool and I think it's time and it's
Exactly.
time.
And look, they always knew that my wife was going to leave because of the way that they were abusing her. But I think the most embarrassing thing is that I just decided to leave with her. We were forced to leave. We left in 2020. We moved out, we fled my home country. We moved to California. And for 12 months during lockdown, where we said literally nothing, it was relentless. And that was a real eye-opener for me. I never thought that we'd be away from it completely, but I did think that we would get some form of peace. But that's when I realized that actually our mere existence outside of that institutional control was more of a threat. Let's just focus on the last 6 years. The level of planting and leaking from other members of the family means that, in my mind, they have written countless books. Certainly millions of words have been dedicated to trying to trash my wife and myself, to the point of where I had to leave my country. At that time, I didn't fully understand how much or how complicit the family were in that pain.
The privacy of your most nearest and dearest without permission. That'll be the accusation, right?
That'll be the accusation from the people that don't understand or haven't or don't want to believe that my family have been briefing the press solidly for well over a decade.
When I work in newsrooms, it's a fact that every anti-Harry and Meghan story comes from Kensington Palace.
But why? Much of the negativity towards the couple is coming from within the royal family. The royal family and staff of the royal family are the ones that are very often leaking these stories to the press.
I mean, they can deny it all they like till they're blue in the face, but there's been an awful lot of leaking, particularly from Kensington Palace.
I was told I could say what I want about Harry and Meghan, but I had to lay off William and Kate. That was the instruction from the editor.
Although, my job is to report on the royals and to be, sometimes part of their PR spin and be positive about them.
The palace has a history of swapping stories. So if I am a reporter and I come to the palace and I say, I've got this pretty scandalous headline about William, the palace would swap out that story for a story about Harry. They'd say, I'm going to give you this story about Harry if you'll kill this William story. So this has been going on literally for 20 years or so. Harry has been a victim of this forever.
Frankly, he was thrown under the bus as a teenager by Camilla's, Charles's great drive to have Camilla rehabilitated. And so great relationships were made with the press and with the media so that Camilla's path would be smooth. And it took years and years and years, but it eventually happened. And along the way, Harry was collateral damage in terms of thrown under the bus with stories. And, when you think about it, Camilla is Nobody says it, but in terms, you could be seen as the wicked stepmother.
We do know is that it's a PR strategy that the palace has done for decades. The palace absolutely has to paint Kate in the perfect light. And if that means running over Meghan Markle, to them, it's justified. Kate is going to be queen one day. So they're doing everything in their power to keep her innocent and pure.
William and Kate are very well respected. They make rounds of the people, and loads more people would rather see him instantly step to the throne than Charles.
Or are they just better at hiding the truth? Because there are some quite fruity stories about William too, if you want them.
Really?
Yes, not that we can go into detail here,
obviously.
Hello,
So there are
lawyers.
some. I don't know. Always fruity stories.
You know, there are very fruity stories about that. But this is not a battle. It's not a comparison.
Let's move on. We've done enough Harry and Meghan bashing.
The royal family manipulate the media. I'm talking about the print media, the British print media, in a way you simply would not believe. So, for example, in the mainstream press, it is verboten to write a piece in support of Meghan and Harry. It is an absolute dictum, spoken and unspoken, that the newspapers do not want and will not print pieces that are wholly positive to Meghan and Harry, and you cannot write anything negative really about William or Kate. This is because of the deals that have been done between the palace and the editors of these papers. Okay. If you look at the Telegraph app, you will see 4 or 5 pieces in absolute eulogizing praise of the Princess of Wales. And then the chances are on the same day, every piece about Meghan and Harry is negative. They literally take a baseball bat and bash this couple to pieces. The books that I've written about the monarchy is that the reason the British monarchy has survived and prospered when other European monarchies has failed is they are utterly ruthless, and their absolute goal is you have to have the spotlight on the monarch and the heir, and anybody else who comes into the picture and takes too much of the oxygen or too much of the limelight, you see is pushed out. We saw it with Diana, we saw it with Fergie, we've seen it with Harry and Meghan. They were too threatening as a unit to Kate and William. The tide turned, and I believe, Harry, that was instigated from within the palace. And you cannot fight the palace narrative. Nothing is leaked without the nod from the principals. For example, the Tightgate story. What's interesting is nobody came out from the palace and backed Meghan's story, and yet they came out and they backed Kate's story. What I think there's a deeper meaning and a deeper context, which is there is definitely no question in the British press an absolute movement to discredit Harry and Meghan and the need to bolster William and Kate, and they have to be sanctified in the press, and they are these saints. You know, I really do feel that Harry was absolutely on the money when he said we had to leave, because once this tsunami of bad press comes against you, it is very, very difficult to rise above that. She is being discredited by the establishment. She is being discredited by the broadsheet press in this country. She hasn't really been given a chance, and that it became so toxic for them. I think that they could not access the truth. Harry absolutely knew that, you know, the palace were leaking stories about them, that the narrative had to be, to discredit them in order to refocus the spotlight on William and Kate, that there was an envy after their successful foreign tours. They had star quality as a couple, just as Diana did.
Yeah, I think what happened, I've always thought this, is that when Meghan and Harry got married, it was such a wonderful day for the whole nation. We all kind of fell in love with them. I think that William and Kate started briefing against them. I really do.
William and Kate.
And I think it went out of control. It went out of control.
Journalists about how the media inflames this. I was called by the Sun newspaper. If you don't know what the Sun is, it's sort of
got the topless girl on page 3. That's all you need to know.
And they called me about a month ago to ask if I'd write about how Meghan was like Wallace and how Meghan was going to destroy the royal family and the arguments between Meghan and Kate. And I said, I'm really sorry, I'm just not privy to all of this. I don't think I could do it. And the commissioning editor was really twisting my arm to write this article and say, but you could say, couldn't you, that X happened, and you could say that she's fired all her staff, and you could say that Kate has said this. And I said, well, I'm really sorry, I don't know that, I can't do it. And this conversation went on for about half an hour, and I didn't write the article, but it just gives you an insight into how this whole thing is being, the flames are being fanned by the media.
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I mean, the fact is that the royal family does have a huge amount of power over the British press in this country. And if you ever want any kind of ongoing relationship with the royals, which obviously everybody does, then if you are the one who goes straight over the top and broadcasts something, especially something deeply personal, then you are going to be excommunicated from the royal pool, as it were.
Have you heard from anyone in the palace thanking you for the, serious defense of them?
I've had some messages communicated to me on behalf of several members of the royal family.
Upper level
We're very
people?
grateful that.
When I was working for the BBC, a very senior royal correspondent at the BBC, I was excluded from parties and events. I remember one big party at Buckingham Palace. I wasn't invited as the royal correspondent. Piers Morgan was as the editor of the Mirror. David Yellen was as the editor of the Sun. And I used to say to them, why? And why do you plant stories? And they did. Plant is a strong word. Give stories to the tabloids first. Why did you come to me and I'll broadcast and they can follow me? But that was never the way.
I think that most of the general public would assume that the monarchy are at the mercy of the British press, when the reality is there is a far greater level of manipulation that goes on from the royal courts to the media than Joe Public would ever believe.
I think everyone needs to have some compassion for them in that situation, right? There is a level of control by fear that has existed for generations.
Because what the autobiography lifts a lid on is the very grubby dealings between the institution of the palace and the tabloid media, where instead of being able to be a family, which is defined by love and nurturing and caring for one another, the royals have been turned into this kind of hideous cartel where they're feeding each other to the wolves in order to advance their own interests. And I recognise this as a minority opinion in this country, but I do think that that is a quality inherent to monarchy. I think that princes and dukes are good names for musicians and dogs. I don't think that they're, great titles for human beings. And when you look at the misery that these people have inflicted on one another, I think of them as, like zoo animals who've been, bred in captivity, and they lead these existences where they're clearly really unhappy. But
knowing the monarchy as I know it from something that I was brought up in, for me it's always been about uniting people. And it breaks my heart that the British tabloid press have so successfully, managed to create this divide and this conflict at the same time as a culture war in the UK. So you talk about peace. Peace can happen when there's truth. Well, they've shown absolutely no willingness to reconcile up until this point. And I'm not sure how honesty is burning bridges. Silence only allows the abuser to abuse, right? So I don't know how staying silent is ever going to make things better.
I was surprised that he was open, vulnerable, because we could feel his pain when he was speaking about his father. And the moment where he says that 72 members of parliament stood up and nobody in his family did, and that hurts. I could feel that he really deeply meant that.
There is a revelation. There is something new and unexpected in this, which is we get to hear the voice of a black woman who's been persecuted to an extent that is horrific in this country. Hearing the voice of a black woman talking about her experiences is revelatory, I'm afraid. So that, I think that idea, there's nothing new.
You know, they can't go too all out on Prince Harry. So let's go for the evil, scheming woman, you know, that whole thing about women taking men away, dragging them somewhere and, you know, destroying them. I mean, how misogynistic is that?
I don't think anyone could have told her what it would be like to be a biracial woman in the royal family, because there hasn't been one in modern times. And the thing about her, it's not just her heritage, it's the fact that she's owned her heritage. She's not sought to downplay it and said, oh, I don't see race, it's fine, just forget it, just pretend it's not there. She said, my mother's African-American and I'm proud of her heritage. Similarly, her feminism, which I think is also a big part of the hostility that she's experienced from the tabloid press. She hasn't kind of swept it under the carpet. She said, I'm a feminist and I want my activism to relate to who I am as a feminist. And I think it's that owning of her identity that is absolutely different from anything we've seen from senior royals before. And that's what was inspiring and refreshing to me. But I fear it's what has been threatening to parts of the British establishment.
I think what she's done wrong is not to be of the correct stock. I think what she's done wrong is to be an American, to be an outsider, to have been divorced. Also, she's a strong woman. I'm not saying she's perfect, but I'm sorry, Prince Andrew doesn't get as much, consistent vitriol.
So what do you think is at play here? Is it sexism? Is it racism? Is it a heady combo of both?
Yeah, it's all those and above. I mean, when it comes to an outsider and a female of colour, then that is something that you are going to come down on because it shouldn't be allowed.
When people keep asking what examples, it makes me question. It makes me question, where have you been the last 2 years? What have you been reading? What have you been listening to?
I've been reading
right.
some criticism.
Right.
I haven't personally read anything that I could say was based on racism.
And this is part of the problem. And let me explain what racism looks like from the lens of white privilege. White privilege whitewashes racist and inflammatory language as unconscious bias. It perpetuates the bigotry of intolerant white people as ignorant. It defends and protects their private views, once spoken, as misspeak, and then camouflages racist behavior as error of judgment, which is exemplified by Danny Baker's tweet when he compared Archie to a chimpanzee. Now, look, I think if you look at a lot of the criticisms she's faced, even a lot of the examples, it sums up to one thing. How dare she? She doesn't know her place. She's uppity, right? When a black woman, right, goes along with the flow, does what is expected of her, it's all okay. But the moment she exercises independent thought, independent authenticity, her own independent views, she's a problem.
And I recall early on when I first approached her in 2018, and she had just joined the royal family, and she shared a conversation with me then that really made me feel somewhat disheartened, because she said she had been given advice that it would be best if she could be 50% less than she was. Wow. That was the quote. If she could be 50% less. And I remember hearing that in 2018 and said specifically to her, I don't know how you're going to survive being half of yourself.
Part of this family and the platform that comes with that is an incredible responsibility that I take really seriously.
I think the way Meghan tried to work in the palace didn't fit in with how other members of the royal family worked. I know aides who have one meeting a month with their principals. Harry and Meghan were popping in and out of the office almost every day for briefings and updates.
I think they felt that she'd come in and, kind of be a sleepy little royal. But Meghan was like, no, I need to know the people, the places, I'm going to talk to people, I need to know nationalities, I need to know languages.
There have been reports that she comes to meetings with tons of questions and binders, that she does the work ahead of time.
She's aggressively emailing her staff at 6 in the morning. She couldn't do anything right.
Now, if every American got in trouble because they sent emails too early in the morning, I'm like, isn't that what you're supposed to?
Charm that was her hard work and her perseverance was being turned into a problem for the royal family.
I cannot believe it's 2020 and we're still faulting women for being ambitious.
Let's look at the way she has been compared to, let's say, Kate. So I'm going to give you 3 examples.
This is pointless what you're about to do.
No,
you're about to take 3...
Well, hang on.
Ayesha put her on before you
dismantle it. Me onto the show.
Off you go.
I took up the challenge.
Absolutely
Come
right.
on, show some manners.
You're going to
Mr.
do 3
Morgan.
positive stories about Kate, 3 negative ones about
but the
Meghan.
point
I could
is-
do exactly the same in reverse.
Why don't we let
Ayesha do that
The point
first?
is about contrast. She is portrayed by certain bits of the press, not all the press, certain bits of the press, as being some sort of witch that has got into Buckingham
Who's called her a
Palace.
witch?
I said like some kind
What have they
of
actually
witch.
called her?
They have called her all kinds of things. By the way,
Oh, so anyone call her a witch?
She does. I said like, right? It was a
You can't
kind
just
of
put
kind
these
of
things
thing.
out there.
Okay,
I keep
she's
hearing-
basically. I'll give you some examples. Avocados. Kate likes avocados. Amazing healthy snack. Meghan likes avocados. There's a piece about how she's literally like a war criminal and is supporting sort of military action and bad things happening.
Okay.
Then there's the thing about how the bump was cradled. You know, Kate cradles her bump. Everyone's like, oh, it's a lovely, warm, maternal thing. Meghan cradles her bump. It's like, ooh, look at the way she's cradling her bump.
Meghan genuinely
It's all
cradles
very
her bump in a
weird.
weirder way than Kate.
That's
Just a fact.
You can't
It's a
listen
tiny
to
little
yourself.
insignificant
Listen
thing.
to yourself.
But every mother I've talked to said the
Weird.
same thing.
No,
Every
they
mother, black,
haven't.
white,
Piers,
gender
Piers,
fluid,
hello.
any mother you like,
Piers, hello.
said
I'm
the
a
same
mother.
thing.
I'm a mother.
Well, you don't see anything
I
wrong with
do
her.
not agree
Is there anything wrong with her?
with
Here's
your
my point.
characterisation
Here's my
of
point.
the way that
Listen,
Ayesha, what
you
Twitter...
may self-identify as a penguin these days, Piers,
No.
but you have not been
Two-spirit
pregnant.
penguin.
Okay, let me now
You have
respond.
not- I mean,
Let me
you
now-
might look like you are, but you're not
Wow.
pregnant.
Again, you see the difference in the way the press treated those 2 women.
You only need to look at some of the coverage that has called Kate a fashion icon for wearing a strapless dress, but then called Meghan vulgar just a few weeks earlier. And it's these sort of discrepancies that have made it quite difficult to understand what it is that the British press have had in for Meghan.
So, yeah, I can understand why he's blaming the media, because the media are to blame.
A racial undertone, that's just racist, isn't it?
Either she made Kate cry or Kate made her cry over flower girl dresses. And then she made her staff work. And now she actually got married on this day, but she said she got married on that day. Well, that's it. That's it. That is the smoking gun. I mean, what else can we say that would make Meghan Markle a worse person? Get out of here. These little, it's dumb. Bring us something real. Then we can all get crunk about it.
This is in his column. I'm just going to read what he said about Meghan. At night, I'm unable to sleep as I lie there, grinding my teeth and dreaming of the day when she, Meghan, is made to parade naked through the streets of every town in Britain, while the crowds chant shame and throw lumps of excrement at her. Now, he had a lot of public backlash for that, and he apologized, and they took the thing down. But what type of idiot writes something like this
Someone
about
that
a
works for the
person, a
Sun.
girl, who lives in the world, who's trying to wake up in the morning and get through the day?
I don't think we can ignore the racial component.
What a
here.
disgusting
I don't think we can ignore the racism and the bigotry that she faced.
And classism,
and classism, but I think it had much more to do with race. And the royal family made all of its money on the backs of black and brown people, stole a lot of that wealth, had slaves, participated in the slave trade. Well, that's why this was such a missed opportunity. They should have embraced her and brought their country closer together instead of pushing her away and playing on their bigotry.
It remains a powerful tradition.
You're right, because look, they're like Kevin McCarthy. They just want power.
Yeah,
We've
seen.
Jeremy did tweet that he was, quote, horrified to have caused so much hurt and vowed to be more careful in the future. But here's the thing, you guys. He's a really big host in the UK. He hosts Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. He also has 2 other shows on Amazon Prime.
And he hosted Top Gear, which is probably the most popular show in the history of UK. Absolutely.
What the heck was he thinking by saying that? And how does he still have his job? Or am I
Jobs?
Jobs?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it shows the power
that certain people have, and also the consumerism of degrading women, and also the violence against women. Because Camilla, the Queen Consort or whatever, just had lunch with this person, and there seems to be a sign-off by these words being published in The Sun that this is okay. And I believe Camilla has an initiative about protecting women or the endangerment of women, and this seems like something volatile enough to constitute the endangerment of a woman who, BT dubs, what has Meghan Markle done?
I know.
Like, honestly, what has she done other than exist and marry a man that you don't feel that she's deserving of? Because at the root of all of this, that's what it's giving.
I think we all know what Prince Andrew's done.
Right.
I wonder if there's an article about him.
Right.
I'm very curious.
I also have to say, like what Erica said, when you hate someone on us, I get that he's a provocateur. I know who he is. People are like, oh, he says stuff like this all the time.
But he doesn't write op-eds.
Right, and when he says this about someone who already has that much vitriol, when you hate someone on a cellular level, even if you're joking, again, where was there the fight between these two people? What did she ever do? So what Erica is saying really truly is and you said it before, they're proving her point. She does nothing, and they eat her alive, throwing excrement at her as she
didn't
walks.
read that part.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
But it's important. It's so dirty and vile and violent. And you can say I'm overreacting, but I think it's reckless for someone who is a target like that.
I have the same visceral reaction.
He did this because he had permission.
Yes.
You don't write an article about this. You don't write anything about
it's in the Sun.
The royalty without permission. You don't do this. This is the boss letting you know that you can take a shot. To start talking about organizations like this, nothing happens, nothing is written, nothing is said without permission. So he had permission to write this.
Just left Camilla's
and here we go. There is no way that there's an article that would ever be written about anybody like this without express permission. And I'm sure speculation, I think somebody probably perused this before it went up.
As a former Fleet Street tabloid journalist, I could not believe my eyes when Jeremy Clarkson wrote doubly of his desire to see Meghan Markle paraded naked through the streets of every town in Britain while the crowds chanted shame and threw lumps of excrement at her. But in terms of base misogyny, I found it even more remarkable that he talked about hating her even more than he hated Nicola Sturgeon, whose only offence seems to me, from Jeremy Clarkson's point of view, the fact that she's a woman. Or possibly the fact that he's Scottish and independent and strong-minded. And, of course, Rose West, a serial killer. If the story's still bubbling away a month later and he's apparently facing the end of employment with an organisation like Amazon, he's obviously decided, completely coincidentally, that he needs to return to the fray and offer up a more fulsome apology, which reads as follows. Usually I read what I've written to someone else before filing, but I was home alone on that fateful day and in a hurry. So when I'd finished, I just pressed send, and then when the column appeared the next day, the landmine exploded. It was a slow rumble to start with, and I ignored it. But remember, this is an absolutely deep and sincere apology. But then the rumble got louder, so I picked up a copy of The Sun to see what all the fuss was about. This is weird. We've all been there, I guess. In that precise moment when we suddenly realise we've completely messed up, you're sweaty and cold at the same time and your head pounds and you feel sick. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Oh, got something in common. Had I really said that? It was horrible. I knew what had happened straight away. I'd been thinking of a scene in Game of Thrones, but I'd forgotten to mention this, so it looked like I was actually calling for revolting violence to rain down on Meghan's head. I was very angry with myself, because in all those controversial days on Top Gear, when I was accused of all sorts of things, it was very rarely sexism. Yeah, that's right, because you compared her to two men, didn't you, when you talked about hating her on a cellular level? You said, I hate her more than Fred West, and Rishi said, oh no, you didn't, mate, you chose women. But you're definitely not a misogynist. We never did women can't park gags, for instance. Is it too late to get them canonised? They never did women can't park gags on Top Gear. Is it too late to put him up for sainthood, do you think? Is it? Or suggested that powerful cars were only for men. Yeah, here's a big shock here. Television presenters trying not to alienate potentially half of their audience. I'll give the man a medal. And I was thrilled when Jodie Kidd and Ellen MacArthur set fastest ever laps in our reasonably priced car. Pardon? What? You compared her to a serial killer and said you preferred the serial killer, and you think the fact that Jodie Kidd drove a car quickly round a track on your old television programme somehow exonerates you from the allegation of misogyny? Mate, I think you should have read this to somebody before you sent it. Never mind the actual article. But he's not finished. He says, I'm just not sexist. Which is, of course, what all sexists say. And I abhor violence against women. And yet I seemed to be advocating just that. No, pal. You were not advocating just that. You were... you weren't seeming to advocate just that. You were advocating just that. And for a man who abhors violence against women, how could you possibly hate someone who has committed no violence against women more than someone who killed several women after torturing them with her husband? Nothing says I abhor violence against women than saying, here's a blameless princess who I've got a problem with for reasons I can't really explain, but I had dinner with her mother-in-law last week, and I hate her more than an actual serial killer, but I abhor violence against women. Oh, and Ellen MacArthur once drove a car really quickly around a track on a television programme I used to present, so how could I possibly be a misogynist? It's pathetic.
You know, I think that when they were married, it was a beautiful day. Right. And people were celebrating how you saw this woman of color now in the royal family, gospel songs sung at the ceremony, the Queen sitting there. And then the reaction was so much acrimony and just looking to treat her differently. And people, whether you're in the UK or around the world, that was always treated differently, understood what Meghan was going through. It was somebody black working in the C-suites for the first time, and they treat you differently. Or someone walking down the street. And I think she became a symbol not of her own making. When you see the kind of mean-spirited article this guy wrote for no reason, drag her through the streets and all. Yeah, fine, you can apologize, and many of us have said things not at that level that we could apologize for. But what makes you feel that you can say that in the first place? Right. And I think that in many ways they exposed what was already there, and then people tried to blame Meghan for they are being exposed.
A British DJ has been fired for a controversial tweet about the royal baby. The BBC's Danny Baker posted a photo showing a couple holding hands with a chimpanzee, and the caption read, "Royal baby leaves hospital."
Within the first 8 days of our relationship being made public was when it said Harry's girl almost straight out of Compton, and that her exotic DNA will be thickening the royal blood. You can get followed, photographed, chased, harassed. The clicking of cameras and the flashes of cameras makes my blood boil. It makes me angry. It takes me back to what happened to my mum and what I experienced when I was a kid.
That's enough.
But it went to a whole new depth with not just traditional media, but also social media platforms as well.
It was the first big event that she had been invited to meet the wider family.
Also present was Princess Michael of Kent.
She was wearing a blackamoor brooch, which depicts effectively an African slave.
Wearing a blackamoor brooch to meet Meghan's family is next level. I wonder if this woman has a cabinet full of racist brooches for different occasions. Who even has that? Is she just like, Jeeves, I'm off to Korea. Fetch me my necklace of a dog in a frying pan, please?
Number one, why would you wear it anyway? It's kind of caricature of black subservient people. Number two, did she not know Meghan was going to be there? It's so awkward.
So what on earth Meghan thought about that, God only knows.
As the Duchess left the banquet, a press photographer captured an image of the brooch.
Immediately, there's a storm of controversy that created international headlines and massive embarrassment for the royal family.
She's got to know. She had to have known, and I found it really offensive, and I felt bad for Meghan. And I'm glad that the attention was brought to it.
She had to apologise, and I hope she apologised to Meghan in person well.
You know, at the end of the day, I'm really just proud of who I am and where I come from, and we have never put any focus on that. We've just focused on who we are as a couple.
You are dealing with people like Princess Michael of Kent and others who have a frankly not very impressive record when it comes to talking about matters of race.
For instance, Tatler magazine quoting an old Etonian saying I'd married Meg because foreigners like her are easier than girls with the right background. Or the Daily Mail saying Meg was upwardly mobile because she'd gone from slaves to royalty in just 150 years. Or the social media posts about her being a yacht girl and an escort, or calling her a gold digger and a whore and a bitch and a slut and the N-word repeatedly. Some of those posts were in the comments section on the pages of all three palaces' social media accounts and still hadn't been expunged. Or the tweet that said, "Dear Duchess, I'm not saying that I hate you, but I hope your next period happens in a shark tank." Or the Mail complaining that Meg couldn't keep her hands off her baby bump, that she was rubbing it and rubbing it as if she were a succubus. Things had got so out of hand, 72 women in Parliament from both main parties had condemned the colonial undertones of all newspaper coverage of the Duchess of Sussex. None of these things had merited one comment, public or private, from my family.
We go further. This is a privately leaked WhatsApp conversation with a former Tory friend. The remarks about Prince Harry's fiancée, claiming that black actresses entry into the royal family would pave the way for a black king. During this shocking tirade, you claimed that you would never have sex, and I find this word hard to say out loud, but I'm going to say it in the context of what it was. You would never have sex with a Negro. You described black people as ugly. You suggested that Meghan would taint the royal family because she is mixed race. I mean, you just don't sound like a very nice person.
It doesn't sound very nice, no. There's a lot in there, what you said. Meghan Markle, I think my comments about her were disgusting. They were meant to shock, and they were private.
And the press was saying that Meghan was exotic or straight out of Compton, and that is so offensive. I was talking to a journalist earlier today, and to try and put across to him, I said, suppose you meet your lovely wife and you introduce her to the family, and in the headline in your local newspaper is that your beloved looks like she's straight out of a strip joint. I mean, so, and he was like, oh, right, okay. So other people might laugh it off, but remember, if you've lived with this backdrop bubbling away, Piers, if I can, I'd liken it to if you're blind, if you're sight impaired your whole life, somebody might say nasty things to you every so often, but your whole life is affected by where people place things or don't place things, or whether there's a steps or there's a ramp, your accessibility to life, how much opportunity you may or may not have. I don't think she was ready for this at all. And I actually don't think Harry was either.
From the beginning of Meghan's relationship with Harry going public, there were references to her being somehow associated with gang crime.
No, there weren't. I know that piece.
There was
no, hang on. You can't just say this.
No,
Okay, this is an article about where she grew up.
That she came from gang-scarred Compton.
Where did she grow up?
There was the question of whether there would be a hail of bullets if the royal family came to visit.
Where did she grow up?
She grew up in Los Angeles.
Where?
In Compton.
No. She didn't. She grew up in Crenshaw, which is 10 miles from Compton.
Right.
I live in Los Angeles for a third of the year.
I spend a lot of time in Los Angeles as well.
Well, you clearly don't know your Comptons from your Crenshaws.
I know Compton and
right?
I know Crenshaw. And
she comes from the border of South Central LA, which is one of the most gang-infested areas of the world. Clearly, when it was revealed who she was and what her background was, it was an interesting story that that's where she's from.
She herself said that until she became this princess, she never regarded herself particularly as black, and that's understandable. She grew up in Los Angeles, in the most wealthy black enclave anywhere in the United States, Parkview, Windsor Hills in Los Angeles. She went to a private Roman Catholic school, and in a sense, race was never really part of her background. And
nowhere near Compton. She's from Los Angeles. She went to a private school in Hollywood.
It doesn't make it racist to say that.
The university where I'm a professor is also in South Central LA. It's not only gangs and gun violence.
You know that South Central LA, immortalised by the movie Straight Outta Compton, has a lot of gang violence.
So can we just acknowledge
it was an interesting aspect to this woman's background
that
she came from that part of Los Angeles.
That one element of South Central LA.
You say it's racist, and I say it's factual.
That is a racialised narrative.
It's factual.
So there are other things happening in South Central LA, Piers.
Had she come from Outer Mongolia, that would have been the story.
But Piers, if she was white,
would people have associated her with the gang violence?
Used to describe her straight out of Compton. She's not from Compton.
No.
All the kinds of words that have been used to describe her. She's, as I said, she's uppity. People complain that she shrouded her son's christening. Secrecy. You compared, not you, but the press compared her son to a chimpanzee. You're lucky she even told you about
We've got a press representative.
Well, when I say press, as in
Camilla, you have
the Danny Baker tweet, I think we can all agree, was completely inappropriate, and he was rightly reprimanded.
It was racist.
The straight out of Compton.
He lost his
racist.
job for it.
I said
that he got hired.
Hang on a minute. Let's just let, because specific examples are quite useful here. When the straight out of Compton narrative started, after I broke the story of their relationship back in October of 2016, I wrote and called out that that was inappropriate language to use. Has there been anti-Americanism towards Meghan? Yes. Has there been misogynism towards Meghan? Yes, because we are seeing her take too much of the blame for what is undoubtedly a joint decision.
That's right.
But when we come to the actual specifics of how Meghan has been treated by the palace, which is, people might not believe, but a more multicultural and diverse environment, the royal household, than you might imagine.
The Queen, and now the King, has special exemptions from certain types of discrimination law in the UK. Specifically, they can discriminate against people on the basis of race and sex, the Sex Discrimination Act in the 70s. It is inappropriate and derogatory for Her Majesty's policies to make it possible for proceedings to be brought against her in her own courts. What they're talking about there is a previous act that happened in 1968 that was trying to apply workplace discrimination law according to race. And the Crown successfully lobbied to have the Queen exempted from this, not because she was above the law, but bear with me for a second. They wanted that exemption from the law because they did not appoint coloured immigrants or foreigners to clerical positions. And then in the 70s, when the Equal Pay and Sex Discrimination Acts were being created, the palace said, hold on there, we want the same exception that we got in the Race Relations Bill back in '68. There was one more thing the palace wanted. Not only did they want to be able to discriminate on the basis of race, which they successfully lobbied for in 1968, but then they also wanted to be exempted from the Equal Pay Act and the Sex Discrimination Act, but they also didn't want anyone to know that they were exempt. Decades moved on, but the palace didn't seem to change anything. It was noted in 1990 that there were no black faces in royal service. In 1997, the palace said that they weren't actually monitoring any kind of affirmative action or equality statistics. And the Equality Act was passed in 2010, which consolidated all of these other discrimination acts like the Race Relations Bill, the Sex Discrimination Act. The exemptions were kept on.
There are quite a lot of people of colour working in the royal household. There are quite a lot of people of a different sexual persuasion working in the royal household.
So that hasn't changed anything. They're working, which is different from Meghan,
but you're talking who
has entered the royal family as a member of the family.
And chosen to leave.
I know, but you're talking a lot about white privilege.
She hasn't left. I mean,
you're talking a lot about white privilege, and I'm saying that there are, you can't just paint the palace as this place which is just full of white men in grey suits.
No, but it's not the palace. I'm talking about the culture of racism.
Yeah,
That's why we need to have the conversation.
Which is huge.
In the UK,
it's a huge conversation.
But also,
I just want
there's
to get
criticism
to the bottom of the papers.
But the bottom
Do you
of the
think there
papers-
is a racist element within the media in Britain?
Yes.
I think there's a... I don't think there's a racist element that's overt, but I think that she has been treated as an outsider largely because of her Americanism, the fact that she's a divorcee and the fact that she had a career before. And I think there's been mistrust of somebody new coming in. But equally, if we look at the criticism of Prince Harry, which has been equally vociferous, I know that on one hand we're trying to push Meghan out of this and sort of say, well, she's been uniquely vilified. He has had a great deal of criticism and condemnation, which I suppose we can all agree wasn't racist in its tone.
But this is the challenge that I have. Anytime we have to talk about racism and the real issue of racism and the impact and consequence of it, we keep pushing it away and calling it something else.
Yeah.
It is racism. Let's call it what it is, which is why I explained what I said. the inflammatory language. Oh no, but that's not racist. It's unconscious bias. The fact that people are bigoted in certain ways and they exhibit it in certain ways. Oh, I'm sorry, but that was just misspeak. That was just error of
Harry himself used the phrase. Harry himself
Yeah.
used the phrase unconscious bias. Are you not happy with that phrase?
It's not about what I use unconscious bias because I say that there's nothing unconscious about bias. The point is that there is a real issue of racism in this country.
There have been allegations
Doesn't
that
make
she's
it's not true.
associated with very racialised forms of crime. There have been discussions about her exotic DNA. Her newborn baby
Is her
was
DNA not
compared to a
exotic by
baby
royal
chimp.
standards? She was
And
the first mixed-race person to ever enter the
But you
royal
see, Piers,
family.
this is the
Why is the
context.
word exotic? Why do you take exception to the word exotic?
Because it others her and associates her with a history.
She's an
that has
African-American
positive people
joining
of
a
African
white
heritage
royal family.
As other and
The word
associated
exotic is
with-
not derogatory.
Well, listen, I'm a
You
woman
can't
of
just say
colour.
these things are racist when they're not.
I'm telling you, as somebody who's lived the experience of being a person of African heritage in this country, that there are narratives that are regularly
You see
used
racism
by
in
people
everything.
like you. No, I don't.
No, but are you
No, I
accusing me
don't.
of being racist?
I'm saying that the
Are you?
narratives you're perpetuating, yes, they're racist.
Really? Where have I been
Yes.
racist?
Where have you been racist?
Tell me.
I mean, I come on here usually to discuss debate.
Name one example of me being racist.
On the side of racism.
No, you can say it, but then you have to prove it. Where have I been racist?
What do you think about the British Empire, Piers?
Huh?
The British Empire.
What do you mean? What do you think of the British
What do you think
Empire?
about the
It doesn't
British Empire?
exist anymore.
Do you think that it was positive that Britain went around the world trying to civilise people they
I think
regarded
it had
as savage?
positives and negatives, as I've always
And
said.
what do you think is the legacy of that project of telling people of African heritage that they were closer to savages? Do you think that entire history, which ended, by the way, in the 1950s,
I think a lot of it was
is
deeply
disappeared
flawed
and irrelevant?
and I think a lot of it was good, like most people.
So the royal
Why am I a
family-
racist?
But because you... Listen, my definition of racism is that we've inherited a very racialised history. Either you're committed to trying to dismantle and change that history of racism, or you're part of it.
Where
It
has the
doesn't mean you
media
have
been
to-
racist about Meghan
The
Markle?
media has wholeheartedly thrown itself, not all the media, but sections of it, especially the bits that you work for, Piers, wholeheartedly
The
thrown
bits that
itself
I work for, wow.
behind,
Okay.
thrown itself behind continuing that project.
Where is
demonising
okay, Afua,
people of
you
colour.
said all this in the New York Times. You say we're demonising a woman of colour. You're the one bringing race into this. I've seen no.
That's actually
I've
not true.
seen.
Prince
I have-
Harry made a statement about how racist
Yes,
British media has
they
been
are driving.
in its
They are
treatment of
driving
him
a
and
narrative that this
Meghan.
is all driven by sexism and racism, which I think is completely grotesquely wrong.
So is Prince Harry someone who sees everything as racist? As you've
I
accused
think
me
he's
of
being
doing?
encouraged to, yes.
By this
people
woman,
like you.
and this is another
By
racist
people like you
narrative, by
going
the
to the
way.
New York Times and basically
By-
telling the Americans that we're a racist country driven by racist media, and that's what this is all about.
Do you
Let me
not
bring
see
it-
anything wrong with you?
You can't
as
name a
white
single
person? I've
example.
just given you 3 or 4.
No, you haven't.
Right, should we go through them?
Well, the state head of
allegation that
Compton was one of them,
she's
Piers.
She's
She
related to
literally
gang crime.
comes from, as the Mail put it, nearly straight out of
Her
Compton.
baby compared to a baby chimp. And when people like me
That
said
was
that
Danny-
was a racist joke,
Okay,
no,
that
then
was-
people
hang
like
on,
you said
hang
that
on.
wasn't racist.
Danny Baker was a BBC broadcaster
Yes.
who said, and I have no reason to disbelieve him, he had no idea about the background to Meghan Markle. He
That
doesn't-
she had
he doesn't
African
follow-
heritage.
Danny Baker is not remotely racist, as anyone who knows him knows, right? Danny Baker was unceremoniously beaten up on Twitter. Within 7 minutes, he deleted it, so I'm terribly sorry. I had no idea.
Did you acknowledge that that was
Wait a minute.
racist
He then
narrative?
got fired and vilified. That's what happened to Danny Baker.
Why?
Right.
Why did he get fired? Why was there an issue
He
with
got
that
fired
tweet?
because he put a chimpanzee baby
Right.
out as a tweet
Imagine
without
yourself-
knowing, as he said, without knowing anything about
Imagine
Meghan Markle's
yourself
background.
in the position of the only woman of colour in our lifetime to be a senior royal, who is vilified by the press, as they vilify all the royals regularly, to be fair, but is in a especially vulnerable position because she's the visible difference about her is her African heritage. And then on top of that, there are slurs used against her that have
Sarah,
very
Sarah, you've
overtly
defended-
racist
Sarah, I-
content. Had a chance to come in. In
Please.
response to your question, Carol, you know, my issue is that everybody makes the person who does the racist thing the victim. So you're asking, is it right that he was sacked? Greg's saying he's a nice guy, he's going to lose his job. You know, how is he the victim in this scenario? This is a pregnant woman who had to arrange new levels of protection because of the amount of racist abuse she was receiving, which escalated when she announced she was pregnant. She's always had racist abuse, but when she announced her pregnancy, it multiplied because there is so much toxic racism in our society.
It's not Danny Baker's fault.
That's not Danny Baker's fault, but
You
what
go.
is Danny Baker's fault is that he did something which was so offensive that when I first saw it, I actually thought it was a prank. I just thought nobody who the BBC gives a platform could be stupid enough to say this and not intend it to be racist, because it is one of, and we could talk about unintended racism or microaggressions. This is none of those. This is the most blatant, clear-cut example of racism. It's that generations of people have recognized this as an overtly racist trope. Within people's lifetimes, black people were still being compared to monkeys and dehumanized regularly.
So the sacking is right, you
So
think?
I'm not interested in him. I'm not interested in him or what happens to him. By the way, he's already done a show which was more successful than his previous shows since he's been sacked. So if you're worried about his career, then I suspect
No one's worried about
there's no
his
reason to.
career per
I'm
se.
not interested
What
in
we're
him. I'm
talking-
worried about the millions of black people who regularly live with this kind of abuse and then have to be in spaces like this where everybody denies it's a problem. That is something that I could not feel more strongly about, and I'm living it right now in this conversation. It's not good enough.
A different way to explain, not to you, but to so many people, on why what has been said is so wrong.
Right.
I've walked into institutions as the only person of colour and experienced covert and overt racism on so many occasions. And why the Meghan interview really resonates with me is because an ex-work colleague, not of this show, asked me if I was worried about the shade of cocoa that my son was going to come out.
Right.
So I fully understand the hurt that is behind all of that.
Right.
The coverage of her is not as one of us, but of this strange, exotic being. She's not the all-white, all-wholesome girl that Kate is. The reason that they didn't want any press pictures of Archie after he was born, because they knew perfectly well that all the press wanted to know was what colour was he.
And when you're mixed race, what you find, in my personal experience, and there may be other people that may come forward and say this, is that when you are a lighter shade of black, people gain confidence and feel that they can say things to you that they wouldn't say to a black person.
If you have two parents, one's white and one's black, as in Meghan's case, and she's pregnant and going to have a baby, is it racist and offensive for a family member to say, oh, what colour might the baby be? I mean, I would imagine in most families that might be a question they think and they might ask, but not in a racist or derogatory manner. Now tell me if I'm wrong.
Piers, why does it matter what colour a child is? As long as the child is healthy.
It's just it might just be curiosity, Trisha. In other words, it may not have been a malevolent thing to say.
Piers, here's another curious thing. People are often, when I've got my hair natural, people are curious about what my hair feels like.
Yeah.
So they'll come up behind me while I'm doing something and run their filthy hands through my hair. It's only curiosity. They might make comment about my feet or talk about me in front of me. It's only curiosity. But day in
any
and
context
day
that
out,
conversation may... We don't know who the conversation was with or the context, but what you're saying is any context in which that kind of conversation happened is automatically racist.
if you are working against a backdrop of non-stop stuff, it doesn't take one straw, you know, and it takes one straw to break the camel's back. And what gets me is why is everybody else such an expert about racism against black people? I'm sorry, you know, I'm sorry, Piers, you don't get to call out what is and isn't racism against black people. You can call out all the other stuff. I'll leave you to call out all the other stuff you want, but leave the racism stuff to us, eh?
She said there was concern. Harry didn't say that. And my question for you is this, and it's a straight question I think a lot of people are asking, because you've been in this position, right? And you've been equally offended.
On the receiving end of that
Is
question.
is there a qualitative difference between somebody perhaps innocently saying to you, out of interest, if you have one parent is white, one parent is black, you know, what colour could your baby be?
Oprah was speechless. Most people are speechless, but I have to tell you, I don't think Oprah, I don't think anyone who watched it, especially any person of color, is surprised that the British family, that there was racism there. That is what the monarchy is based on. Heredity, hierarchy, a caste system, bloodlines. And so the whole institution is built on a racist structure. So there should not be a, oh my God, the British family is racist. Of course they're racist. That's what the entire monarchy is built on. The racism, the family that is supposed to be in that only by birth. And so far by birth, it's only been white royals on the British throne. That's it. So we shouldn't be like oh my God, the British family's racist. Yeah, the system is racist.
Let me finish. What colour could your baby be? Is there a difference between that question phrased in that innocent, perhaps, way, and somebody doing it in a tone that says, well, how dark is your baby going to be?
Well, I think,
in a derogatory, perhaps racist
right,
tone.
exactly, and there is a difference. But what we're getting from the interview is that it was said in a negative way.
Those months when I was pregnant, all around this same time, so we have in tandem the conversation of he won't be given security, he's not going to be given a title. And also concerns and conversations about how dark his skin might be when he's born.
What?
And
who is having that conversation with you? What?
So,
there is a conversation. Hold up.
There's
Stop
several
right now.
There are several conversations.
There's a conversation with you,
with Harry,
about how dark your baby is going to be.
Potentially, and what that would mean or look like. That was relayed to me from Harry.
What was that conversation?
That conversation, I'm never going to share. But at the time it was awkward. I was a bit shocked.
Can you tell us what the question was?
No, I'm not comfortable with sharing.
He said that, but he didn't, did he?
Listen, stop separating Harry and Meghan. They are a team, quite clearly.
Yeah.
A very strong team. And I do believe that she backs him up and he backs her up.
Yeah. One of the things that has most disturbed this family and the nation up to a point is that not only did the son of Diana marry a woman who was not white and an aristocrat, but also that these two have an equal relationship. And that equal relationship blows their minds. They can't bear it.
So, and like I said, tone and language is everything.
But is there a
when it was said,
but let me ask
when
you,
it was said to me, the key word was, are you worried?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
But that to me is
and
racist.
there's a big difference.
That to me is racist.
But that's what she
It is racist.
But do you think, is there a difference? If it was said, perhaps in all innocence, right? And they just said, oh, what colour baby might you have? Without any suggestion of it being a concern or a worry if it had darker skin. Would that in itself, would just the question be racist?
That in itself is fine, but you have to think about how it feels on the receiving end. But we have to also just take a step back. Do you know how much courage it takes to actually speak about racism, to actually call it out? Because I've been in situations where I haven't called out every single bit of racism that's happened to me based on how I've been treated or how it was handled in the past.
Because you're worried about a backlash.
And you're also worried about a backlash. And there will be people that will treat Harry and Meghan differently because they've spoken out.
Okay.
But this is the whole thing. We've got to get comfortable talking about the uncomfortable. And that's why it's important for me and you to have this conversation.
Right, but say it is a future king that said this in a derogatory way. We can't have a racist king.
We can't.
So let me give my reaction to you, Piers, okay? I just, your every rant you've just given the last hour, It's honesty. You're such a liar and a disgrace.
Yeah, but you're about to do the same thing. I'm giving you the platform. You talk about the interview. You trash me every time you come on. You trash me every time you come on, which is exactly the thing you accuse me of doing. If you've got something to say about the interview, say it.
Let me finish. You bring out coverage about Meghan and Harry on their wedding day and the engagement, but conveniently forget to show the coverage before they got engaged, between the engagement and the marriage. So you conveniently forget that Prince Harry, in November 2016, talked about the racist undertones of the media. You conveniently forget all of that to paint this picture that all was rosy and hunky-dory. Nonsense. And then you were lording over the Queen. Listen, by all means, let's applaud the Queen when she does something right. But when she does something wrong, we need to call her out.
What does she do wrong? What does she do wrong?
What kind of grandmother? Let me finish. What kind of grandmother will be so close to her grandson, Harry, but then not use her power and influence as Queen to protect them from the racist media coverage?
I find what you're saying about the Queen actually disgraceful. I find what you're saying, you're entitled to your opinion, Shola. I find, sorry, no, I'm allowed to respond to what you've just said.
Is rooted, listen, you might learn something. The royal family as an institution is rooted in colonialism, white supremacy, and racism. The legacy is right there. So you're now surprised that a comment would have been made by several members of the royal family about how dark Archie's
It's not several members, actually. No, you can't spew lies.
More outraged that Harry and Meghan.
Are we allowed to engage in any of this?
Let me finish.
Well, you're not stopping.
That Harry and Meghan had the audacity to speak that truth, then you should be at the actual outrage of racism.
Right, okay. Am I allowed to respond to this? Am I allowed to respond yet?
You can respond now.
Okay. I think what you just said about the Queen is disgusting. I think it's unbelievable. You talk about the behaviour of a 19...
Am I lying when I said that?
Allow me to say what I'm... Allow me to explain.
And the institution is protected.
Allow me to defend our royal family, thank you.
You tell me.
Right, if you stop shouting, I'll answer you. You going to stop shouting?
Or after you stop shouting.
Yeah, let me tell you why I think what you said was disgusting. The Queen is 94 years old, right? Her husband is 99. He's lying in hospital for the 4th week, seriously ill. You talk about how could... Please let me speak, Shola.
Ooh, everybody, come on, let's
please
just stay calm.
Okay, whenever you're finished.
Recovery, but the reality is you cannot
Shola, I'd like to finish my sentence, please.
Any omissions or conduct
I would like to finish my sentence.
What your family has done that has perpetuated racism.
Okay.
You don't cover it up.
Can I please finish my sentence?
You have to be able to call her out when she's done something wrong.
I'm going to finish my sentence now if you stop shouting at me. Here's the finish of my sentence.
Guys.
You talk about the behaviour of a 94-year-old monarch and you say that she should have done more. What about the behaviour of Harry and Meghan, who are spray gunning his family on global television as Philip lies in hospital? You might laugh. I don't think it's funny. I think it's piling hurt on the Queen, who is already suffering greatly from her husband's illness.
I'm going to respond to that. What I don't think is funny, I'll tell you what I don't think is funny. It's the fact that you are such a disappointment. I wish to God one day you would even surprise me. You constantly use your platform as a wealthy, white privileged man with power and influence.
Oh, what a load of nonsense, honestly. What a load of race-baiting nonsense.
And the misogynist attacks on Meghan Markle. And you do it so shamelessly.
We have done more on racial issues on this show than any other show on television. You're talking... Shola, you can keep shouting.
That the royal family has any racist undertone or actions against the first biracial, but simply because you're in love with the Queen?
No, I think what you're doing now...
You can love the Queen, but you should be able to call out actions done by the royal family when they've got it wrong.
Yeah, I'm not going to let you trash the Queen. Sorry. Just not going to let you do it. I'm not going to let you do it. But you've had your say. Trisha, final question for you. If you tried to invent a show that had all this, you'd reject it as being too outlandish.
Well, you'd call it The Crown.
No, actually, I wouldn't. The name of the show would be Bullying, Piers, and I'm afraid at the moment you'd be the star.
Really?
You know what? we don't even know we've got these problems in our family. You might have an all-white family, and one day someone of colour walks in,
I would love
and you
that.
find out. I know.
I love that. Trisha Goddard yesterday said to me, wait until one of your sons marries a black woman. I was like, I would love
and do you know what, Piers? I wouldn't be surprised if one of your sons brought home a woman of colour.
What part of your...
I think I know from experience, it's very painful for a white partner to see firsthand all these little microaggressions and what have you, and they're shocked. If somebody brings up, yeah, but what colour is your child going to be? And I've been in that situation as well. It is deeply shocking. It might not seem shocking to the person saying it.
Let me jump in.
You say people weren't surprised, but Harry explained that he was surprised, right? That he didn't really see it until he had to see it through the eyes of Meghan Markle, through the eyes of a black woman who he loved. And then he said it was immediate being confronted with this, Dawn.
That part was not surprising because, as we always say, that is what privilege is all about. If it doesn't, you don't have to deal with it, then it doesn't exist for you. Look at all the criticism that before the interview aired, there were so many people who were on social media who were saying, oh, I can't believe, why are they doing this? Oh, woe is me, they're rich, they're wealthy, they're royal, what have you. And not even knowing what the interview was going to be about, not even knowing someone else's existence. I wonder why these people always try to explain what someone else's experiences are and why all of these privileged people, most of them on social media, white women, who are criticizing Meghan and Harry and Oprah for what they were about to do, and then the interview as well. Of course, I'm not surprised that Harry was introduced to racism through his wife, and he felt it in a personal way. That's how it happens. I am a black man from the South who is engaged to a white man from the East End of Long Island. There were revelations for him, and still are in our relationship, because it wasn't something that he had to confront on a daily basis. Now he does. Now Harry does. So it means the world to him. Harry has a black child and a black wife now, so it is personal.
So, Piers, listening to you this morning, I'm saddened. You know what I wish for you? I wish for you only really wonderful things. I hope that one of your sons meets a beautiful black woman and gets married to them, and then you will understand.
Actually, I would love that. Why would I have any problem with that? Why does every criticism of these two have to be framed as racism?
You won't have a problem with it. You'll have to hear her problems with it.
Yeah, I don't.
They had just gotten here the other day when a longtime royal aide, who's also William's godmother, stepped down from her behavior at a palace reception where she repeatedly asked a black guest what part of Africa she was from. To which the woman kept answering, I was born here, I'm British. And yes,
or Duchess at this point, Meghan, told you exactly what was happening within this royal family. She told everybody that there was racism.
Yeah.
She told everybody that she was the target of death threats and racism repeatedly, that the family refused to protect her. And now we see that William's godmother was supposed to be her advisor when she joined the royal family, and that person is also a racist. And what I will say is, you know, I'm just surprised that so many people refuse to believe that she was subject to this type of treatment, even though she told you over and over again.
Racism in the royal family goes a long way back. So when yet another film came out about Diana's love affair with a Pakistani surgeon, I then talked to people who were connected, and some of them in Dodi's family, and some of the people in her Pakistani lover's family. And they told me some of the stuff that the royal family was doing because they were appalled that she had two brown lovers.
The context and the thrust of the thesis is really that the monarchy represents and embodies a kind of racism in Britain. And I mean, that is true. I mean, the royal family is a family of white inherited privilege. The monarchy, you know, is built on the profits of empire. I mean, these are the facts which perhaps people don't want to talk about, but actually Harry and Meghan, and yes, it's, you know, it's celebrity, there's pictures of, you know, Archie and the kids and all of that, but actually that all aside, there's some really quite significant
broader questions and challenges to the monarchy. And so I really don't think it is necessarily that the palace so far have got off relatively scotch-free. I think in many ways that's a more corrosive and much more sustained challenge, which I think is really going to be very difficult to answer, because it questions really the purpose and the place of the monarchy in progressive British society.
Today, the Commonwealth has nothing in common and no wealth. And why should countries even sponsor this nonsensical hangover of the British imperialism? Why should taxpayers' money, my hard-earned money, be wasted on propping up the faded prestige of the British crown as it fantasizes about its past? The sun has set on the British Empire. The crown is lost in the darkness, living in denial of the truth. In Cape Town, then 21-year-old Princess Elizabeth told the Commonwealth, "I declare before you all that my whole life, whether it be long or short, shall be devoted to your service and the service of our great imperial family to which we all belong." India is not part of any imperial family, nor is any other member of the Commonwealth. Today, these words mean absolutely nothing. The only thing most Commonwealth countries have is memory of shared oppression. What strategic interest does the Commonwealth even serve? Where is it placed in comparison to, say, a BRICS, a G20, a Quad, or NATO? The blunt answer is the Commonwealth is nowhere. The Commonwealth is nothing but a tattered vehicle of a now tattered British monarchy. For a country which is sinking economically, politically, socially, for a country that had no qualms in exiting the EU but wants to cling on to the Commonwealth. The people of the former colonies know the truth. The Commonwealth should be renamed Stolen Wealth, for that is the only thing all the countries have in common.
Let's move on to some international news, some very important international news. A scandal out of Great Britain. Apparently, there's this law that's been on the books since medieval times in some areas of the country. If you die, you don't have a will, all your shit goes to this guy. Yeah, that's right. Wrong hand, this guy. It's backwards. The King of England gets your stuff, your house, your books, those little soccer trophies. I'm sorry, football topsies or whatever you call them. And I know this sounds bad, but this is not a scandal. Great Britain is stealing from English people instead of Africans. I call that progress.
What year is it? 2022. But not in Britain. The British are still stuck in the Victorian era, the same delusions of empire, the same arrogance. I'm talking about the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge. This visit is proving to be a royal disaster. Almost like a flashback to the 19th century, the noble British rulers visiting their subjects, exploring the mysteries of their colonies. Take a look. If Belize was bad, Jamaica was worse. Prince William came decked in full military attire. The unusually big hats, the awkward salute, the sword hanging from his waist. None of it represented modern-day Jamaica. It was a throwback to their painful past. Jamaica's Prime Minister probably summed it up best. He said his country wants to move on.
And we are moving on. And we intend to attain in short order with our people and fulfill our true ambitions and destiny as an independent.
In Jamaica, there were protests against the royal visit. They demanded two things from Britain: an apology for their crimes and reparations for slavery. All Prince William could manage was this.
I strongly agree with my father, the Prince of Wales, who said in Barbados last year that the appalling atrocity of slavery forever stains our history. I want to express my profound sorrow. Slavery was abhorrent, and it should never have happened.
You know what was missing? Sorry. Prince William is sad that Jamaicans were enslaved. But is he sorry? That's what the people wanted to hear. But the British monarchy is not ready for it. And this picture should make it clear. The royal couple on one side, Jamaican kids on the other. Between them, this daunting steel fence. Just think about it. Your ancestors enslaved these people. They were put in cages. They were whipped on the streets. The monarchy is not your soft power anymore. If anything, it's the opposite. At the center of this empire was the royal family. They do not represent the glory days of Britain. They represent the worst of Britain. The Germans still apologize for Adolf Hitler. And that's what the British royals need to do, apologize for their past.
Britain's had kings and queens for more than 1,000 years, and as with US presidents, some have been magnificent, others have been what we might now call problematic. Henry VIII, for example, had very serious issues with what would now be known as toxic masculinity. His daughter, Queen Mary, was quite fond of burning Protestants in front of jeering crowds. Similarly, the British Empire committed many heinous deeds in the context of a darker, more ignorant time. But that all happened in the past. That's how history works. None of today's royal family had anything to do with those problematic issues. So why should they apologise for them? Well, campaigners in the Caribbean nations are again demanding that King Charles issues a formal apology for his ancestors' involvement in the slave trade. They also want financial reparations from today's public purse to compensate them for their past suffering. British royals are now routinely barracked for ancestral sins on every tour that they go on, with demands that they issue apologies to Indigenous communities in Canada and accusations they've crushed the development of Jamaica. This week, the Church of England committed to raising £1 billion for reparations, even as his congregations dwindle and his churches fall apart. The exact same movement's happening across the United States, with an increasing clamour for the descendants of slaves to be compensated for their ancestors' suffering. Now, look, there's no denying that slavery was an evil stain on humanity. In fact, that's why the British Empire eventually made it illegal 217 years ago. But even at its height, very few people actually owned slaves. And one thing is for certain, none of the people who foot the bill today were responsible for any of it. To me, this entire narrative is regressive and divisive. How can we ever be colourblind, judging people by their character, not their skin colour, if we continue to preach that half the world's inherently evil and the other half are to blame for it?
From what you've said, what is happening in police questioning is that social media is becoming very real. And not only that, but right-wing figures of ethnic minority are leveraging their platforms to be able to attack critics also from ethnic minority backgrounds. How do we as anti-racists or even as leftists handle discussions like that? Because it seems like it's going to come up more and more in the social media age. And now we're seeing these court cases actually prosecuted.
I think that's a very, very good question. And you're right. Yes, some of these voices on the right are definitely using the lives and livelihoods and the odd flagrant tweet here and there to pretty much promote themselves and give themselves bigger platforms than they would have otherwise. And it works. It really does work. That we're going to have a black or brown prime minister very, very soon, who's probably going to be as right-wing, if not further to the right, than saying Enoch Powell. And that is no exaggeration, because there's some of the people who are coming right now. One of them, who in particular, also, I would say, is certainly much more effective and committed a racist than Enoch Powell ever was.
There is racism there, and you try to call it out, but why do you want to deny it?
Give me one example.
The slavery links, they're all they're racist.
What's that got to do with the royal family?
This is a family.
Wait, shut up!
It's a family. This is
I'm going to ask you a question. Give me one example of our royal family being racist.
Why were they concerned about the skin colour? Why?
Well,
why were they concerned?
Well, they weren't concerned.
They were concerned.
That's what Harry has said. You've got to follow the bloody story. You never read anything. You don't know anything.
He did say that.
Damn it.
Someone was concerned about the skin tone, Kevin.
He was.
Stop it. Someone was concerned. Why I make that up?
Narinda, I know this is difficult for you. Just be quiet for a second.
I'm actually tired.
JJ, would you like to explain to her why no concern was expressed?
So, according to Harry, the person or persons who made the comment, they were not saying it with concern. They said, "What colour will the baby be?"
That's not racist. That's just
I'd say
all families do
that.
You speak to the majority, maybe not all, but the majority of mixed race couples around the world, that the white side of the family would wonder whether talking openly about it or amongst themselves, what the kids are going to look like. The key word here was concern, as opposed to curiosity.
That was wrong. I did. That's racism. I
Okay,
would.
but again,
Why? They didn't even see them, and they're like, what colour was it?
But again, Harry himself said that he didn't think it's racist.
I think he got scared. I'm sorry.
You can't put words in his mouth. You can't put words in his
He wasn't going
mouth.
to sit there and say, yes, the royal family.
Of course he would. Why wouldn't he?
Unconscious bias is racism, by the way.
Where's your family from?
India.
Oh, they've benefited from slavery, haven't they?
No, you guys benefited from colonization.
Racist!
No!
Give me another one.
There's not one person of colour in the
Give
royal
me
family.
another one.
Not one person.
Give me another
Not one
example.
person. They had one woman of colour. You don't give me answer. They had one woman of colour in the royal family. And guess what they did? Boom! Pushed her under the bus. You can get lost. Sling your hook. We don't want someone of colour here. And they wanted just a white royal family. Why? They had a black person in the royal family.
What goes on in your mind?
That goes on in my mind because that's the truth of it.
What goes on
they
in your
had
mind?
a person of colour in the royal family and they decided to push her aside. And guess what? Talking of the protection, why shouldn't he get protection?
So let me ask you this then.
He's the son of the king.
What can I say? At the start of this docu-soap, I was getting all gushy, loved up feelings, watching the first bit, Harry and Meghan, the love story. You almost got me, you two. But what followed once they'd softened me up was a subliminal onslaught of digs at just how racist this country is. The one that gave them both their titles and afforded them the platform to systematically slag it off. Yeah, good old soft touch UK. Having lived in this country for all of, I think it was, 18 months, at our expense, and most of which she spent in a palace or jetting around the world and doing a handful of engagements where she was received by the British public pretty well, Meghan appears to be pointing out that this backlash she is receiving is because of her race.
Very different to be a minority but not be treated as a minority right off the bat. Obviously now people are very aware of my race because they made it such an issue when I went to the UK, but before that, most people didn't treat me like a black woman. So that talk didn't have to happen for me.
I'm black. How can you possibly know how that feels? I can no more know how it feels to be a mixed-race woman that looks practically white than you can to be black. What a ridiculous and frankly insulting thing to say, especially given that she feels she's been treated badly. Her mum then actually spoke. I can see why she'd kept her trap shut all this time. She appeared to confirm that Meghan's treatment was all about race.
I said to her, I remember this very clearly, that this is about race. And Meg said, Mommy, I don't want to hear that. I said, well, you may not want to hear it, but this is what's coming down the pike.
Harry talks about how the other royal brides were treated badly, but with Meghan there is a race element. More talk about race than a story about how her mum was called the N-word in America, although what that has to do with racism in the UK is beyond me. Seriously, if you want to escape racism, why move there? One of the most racially divided countries in the world. It was almost laughable if they hadn't actually appeared to be taking themselves so seriously. And now, 3 months after the death of our Queen, they're pumping out this bilge. None of this, it would seem, they believe, is their fault at all. Look, I'm not saying that they haven't experienced racism, but my view of them has nothing to do with Meghan's skin colour.
Amala, what's the view over in America about Meghan Markle in particular, particularly the way she's played the race card against the royal family as the only non-white bride we've had in the royal family?
Sure. I would say for the most part, Americans are not too fond of Meghan Markle. And to Mr. Andrews, she is biracial, much like I am biracial, and we can make the argument that she's constantly going to be seen as black, but the fact is she's a biracial woman. But I think what Meghan Markle carried with her is an idea of perpetual victimhood. She views herself as a victim because she is female. She views herself as a victim because she is black. And when you carry that sort of energy with you and you view the world through that lens, every odd look is going to be racism. Every off comment is going to be racism. Now, I can't speak to the internal dynamics of the royal family, what was said and what was not, but I do know that that's her attitude.
Her biggest frustration being part of the royal family, she couldn't curate her image for the public. That's the problem she had, because I think she said she didn't grow up in tabloid culture, fine, but there is a way you can manipulate media in the US to try and sort of portray a certain image. But when you're part of the firm, your first sort of duty is your duty to the firm and to the country. It's not about curating the perfect image of yourself. I completely agree that, you know, there are members of the royal family that are less palatable. I've always advocated that Prince Andrew should be kept in the catacombs of Paris. That doesn't change anything. That doesn't change the fact that Meghan Markle is completely unlikable. And the thing is that she can only milk 2 years in the royal family for so long. What else does she have to say? What else? What else is there to her, you know, torturous life as part of the... I'm just going to say that I think one thing that we all respect about the Queen is her sense of duty. And aside from the whole likability argument, which we can go back and forth on, it's the fact that Meghan Markle never showed a sense of duty. And that was the biggest issue. I think, you know, and I don't necessarily blame her, because celebrity culture in the US is very different, right? There's no real sort of, there's no equivalent of the royal family in the US. You become a celebrity, you get rich, you donate money, and you're a god, right? In the UK, it's completely different. You know, there's a real...
This is why Piers Morgan's in America at the moment.
to regain his god status.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you know, you have to be able to read the room. You have to have some respect for the British public. There's certain things you just don't do, and I don't think she completely understood.
I immediately felt connected to this community kitchen. Like these women, I'm passionate about food and cooking as a way of strengthening communities.
She asked me, how many days do you offer this service? And I said 2 days a week. And her straight question was, why not 7 days a year? And I said, funding. So she goes, we can do a cookbook.
Together is the celebration of the food, whereby we share, we laugh, we enjoy, we eat. We are definitely eating.
Working on this project for the past 9 months has been a tremendous labor of love. I had just recently moved to London, and I felt so immediately embraced by the women in the kitchen, with your warmth and your kindness, and also to be able to be in this city and to see in this one small room how multicultural it was. On a personal level, I feel so proud to live in a city that can have so much diversity. It's 12 countries represented in this one group of women is pretty outstanding.
Well, but it's thanks to the Duchess she's still able to cook.
That recipe book has changed 1,000 of people's lives, you know, beginning with me. Everything is happening because of her.
It was Meghan Markle who suggested making the cookbook, and the recipes from this community kitchen became a bestseller.
All this food we're cooking in our own homes with this pandemic and in the kitchen, still the funding is coming from that book. And it was because of her. It all goes back to her, I believe. So, thank you.
Does she still keep in touch now? I know she's gone to LA. Does she
definitely. She's, as I said, she's going through a lot, but still, she doesn't forget those she's been in touch with.
Meghan brought smiles to a grieving community, but at the same time, she was coping with her own deep emotional issues within the royal family.
And I just didn't want to be alive anymore. And that was a very clear and real and frightening constant thought.
It's just disturbing me mentally now to think that she was in a very dark place, but she didn't show it to us, and she's trying to get us from that dark spot. There are days I didn't want to come to the kitchen, even if I'm smiling and I'm dying inside, but others are smiling, others are happy. And this is exactly what she did. So she made a massive difference in our life.
When I first moved to the UK, it was incredibly important to me personally to be able to connect with people on the ground doing really important work. And one of the places that I went to very early on was SmartWorks. Now, funny enough, and purely by coincidence, it was just a year ago at this same time that I was working on a project in Grenfell with this women at a community center called Almanar, and that's when we put together the Together cookbook. So though this is a year later, and obviously this is fashion, not food, at its core, these are very similar projects because they're about women who are empowering each other, me being able to have the opportunity to meet them, get to know them, learn from them, and then say, what can I do in some small way? How can I try to help you amplify this? How can we make this even better, greater, and more impactful for the women that you're trying to help? So on my visits to SmartWorks, one of the times that I went, I realized there was a little bit of a challenge in terms of styling for the women because we had a lot of donations, but not necessarily the things that women needed to have. I said, okay, well, let's try to work with what we have and make the best of it. And then the next time I went, you'll remember this, there was a rack of about 40 or 50 lilac-colored blazers. Now, don't get me wrong. It's a great blazer. And I'm sure for someone, it's exactly what she wants to be wearing. But for most women, when you're going in there and you want to have a job interview and you want to feel your very best and you want to feel confident, you want to be wearing the pieces of clothing that make you feel that way and not the leftovers that didn't sell from the end of a season. And I kept thinking about it as I went home and it didn't track for me. And I said, we have to do something to change this. And a big piece of this is trying to transform the idea of charity to community. And the way that we do that, I think, as people, is when we go into our closet as a woman and you say, I'm going to make a donation, you don't go through your closet and just toss in a box whatever you don't care about anymore. That's charity as we know it today. Community is going through your closet and saying, this is the blazer that I wore when I nailed my first job interview and got my dream job. And I don't need that anymore because I'm where I want to be. But if I'm able to share that blazer and be part of another woman's success story, then that's community. And so when I thought about it in that personal space, I said, on a bigger level, what can we do with brands and what companies would be able to help us convene and come together to really build a collection for the women of SmartWorks that could be the pieces that they need to feel confident going into those rooms. And this is sort of how we thought of the SmartWorks capsule collection. As we've seen this evolve, I think what's been really amazing is to know that these women will now be equipped in a project that will just be a couple weeks, but will give us enough units to be able to have the women at SmartWorks have these key essentials for a year. And that in and of itself, to be able to have one small project that has such big impact is something that I'm really connected to. This is the kind of work that I've been doing for a really long time, and to be able to do it here in my new home of the UK means quite a bit to me. It's also the same vein of work that my husband and I will continue doing, really strong community-based projects. And this is something that we'll be excited to be able to share more about next year when we launch our foundation, Sussex Royal.
Harry and his wife Meghan made a surprise visit to Uvalde in Texas, the site of the second worst school shooting in US history. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex met with the family of Irma Garcia, a teacher who was killed in the 2022 massacre. Garcia's nephew says Harry and Meghan spoke with Irma's children about their hopes for the future, and they brought a birthday cake for Irma's sister.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday.
Family members say the royals have kept in contact with them since the shooting, and in October 2022 their charitable foundation contributed to a new playground for Uvalde's children.
Has she missed a huge opportunity here then? By being her, as a senior member of the royal family, to help break down some of that subconscious racism. She had an opportunity to be that role, to be that person in the biggest role that there possibly is. Do you not feel slightly let down?
Absolutely not. Meghan has done jack all wrong, if I can be perfectly blunt. When you say that she had an opportunity, she hasn't not met the opportunity. It's what she's faced. It's the volume of abuse, the vitriol of abuse steeped in racism, misogyny, sexism. So how much more is she expected to take? And bear in mind that if she had responded, say, as I would respond, she'll be stereotypically defined as the angry black woman.
For this woman who came from a very different world, and I remember writing 3,000 words, the cover story in Time magazine US, and at the end I said, she doesn't know the country she's entering, she doesn't know the family she's entering. The only way this was 5 months before they got married, the only way they will survive is if they leave. She had no idea about the backstory in this family. And you talk to me about racism over and over again. Charles says to a woman I know, a journalist I know from Manchester, he says, "Where are you from?" She says, "Manchester." "You don't look as if you're from Manchester." The Prince Philip, I met him at the Royal Shakespeare Company because I was a governor. I'm standing with my husband. He passes us by, he comes back and he looks at my husband and he says, "You're married to her?" No, is she yours? They are full of it. And Meghan had to survive it.
We spent 4 years trying to make it work. We did everything that we possibly could to stay there and carry on doing the role and doing the job. But Meghan was struggling.
Remember the history. Do not forget what they did to Diana. When Diana was breaking and, in serious mental distress, but she wasn't mad because they were treating her so badly. And actually, just last week, one of Jeffson, I think, said that they leaked all this information about Diana. I remember Nicholas Soames saying on Newsnight, she's crazy, because she did not let Charles own the narrative, because she wanted to tell her side of the story. And they leaked that she was mad, and they destroyed this woman's mental health.
They tried.
And they did the same, I think.
The scariest thing for her was her clarity of thought. She hadn't lost it. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't self-medicating, be it through pills or through alcohol. She was absolutely sober. She was completely sane. Yet, in the quiet of night, these thoughts woke her up, and the practicalities of how she was going to
Have just said she did a bad job of learning how to be black. Why did this person have to learn how to be black? She had to learn how to be black because she had to confront racists, and it was the first time that she was having to confront racists. And we know that she was having to confront
racists. She didn't know anything about the issue about.
And by the way, I don't believe she did confront racists.
And we know that she had to confront racists because Neil Basu, the ex-charity police, has told us that people have been arrested.
Richard, final words.
There's no evidence there were racists in the royal family. She blew a great opportunity to advance the cause of tolerance within this country and to show us as leaders. No, we didn't.
We let her down, and we didn't.
We gave her a
protect
massive opportunity, and she completely blew
There are
it.
people in prison now because of the threats they made to her life.
How would you characterise the threats that Meghan and Harry received?
Well, disgusting and very real. I've talked publicly for many years about the threat of extreme right-wing terrorism in this country.
Many serious, credible threats against Meghan were there, emanating from the far right.
Absolutely. If you'd seen the stuff that was written and you were receiving it, the kind of rhetoric that's online, if you don't know what I know, you would feel under threat all of the time.
So you were convinced that there was a genuine threat to Meghan's life on on more than one occasion, on several occasions?
We had teams investigating it. People have been prosecuted for.
I think this was really one of the most important interviews. People think, oh, it's the royals, blah, blah, blah. No, this got right at the heart of what's going on in the country and in the world with people with the white reactionary force that doesn't want to give up power and the growing demographic and the demand for a reckoning. This little interview was not going to be a little interview. It's a huge interview now.
Right.
She caught that in the interview. And by the way, hats off to Meghan and Harry, especially Meghan, for being so honest and brave in that interview to talk about mental health and suicide issues. God bless her for that. And what an idiot Piers Morgan is to go after that.
I thought it was a fantastic interview. I thought it was eye-opening. I think that there was initially people thought that maybe Meghan and Harry didn't, that they should have waited it out longer. They should have, instead of just 18 months, that they could have made a difference inside the royal family. But once you got a sense and you heard what they said to Oprah about why they did it, then you realized that maybe it wasn't going to work out for them. And the best thing to do was to come to America, do what they did, and speak out with someone like Oprah. I thought it was perfect. I think that they handled it perfectly. So when people say, well, we haven't heard from the other side. What's the other side going to say? They're going to say, oh, of course, we're not racist or whatever. But what did they do? Think about their actions. They did not stand up for their own, because their own was married to a black woman, had a black child. They didn't listen to him inside of the royal family. They let him go. They let him leave the country. They wouldn't come to terms with what they wanted to do. So listen, we've only heard from one side, but that one side at this point rings very...
It's really interesting, Brian, because this whole thing has been, like you've seen from some of the tabloids, a presenting of opinion as fact. Now, the Society of Editors, that's where everything goes from here. They put out a statement denying Meghan Markle's claims, saying that they had a proud reputation of standing up against racism. 160 journalists of colour clapped back. There have been resignations. Ian Murray, the head of the organisation, has stepped down. And what happens next is going to be really, really important for especially the print media.
What should happen next? It feels like a reckoning about race that's finally happening in the British media.
Well, what should happen next is diversity should actually occur instead of being actually talked about. That's one of the biggest things. Yeah.
And this idea that the British press sometimes, there's this coverage that has racial overtones of Harry and Meghan because the newsrooms are not diverse enough. Is that fundamentally one of the critiques?
That is one of the fundamental critiques. I had this debate with a journalist, a white journalist, and asked her to name 3 of her black colleagues. She couldn't even name 3. Her reply to me was that it was offensive of me to suggest that just because there were no black journalists in her newsroom, that white journalists couldn't adequately reflect exactly how black people feel. I rest my case.
I remember that the Sentebale fundraiser.
Yes.
One of the people at that dinner said to me, please don't do this with the media. They will destroy your life. This person is friends with a lot of the editors and like that. And I said, sorry, just elaborate, what do you mean by that? Obviously I knew. He said, you need to understand that the UK is very bigoted. And I stopped him, I said, the UK is not bigoted, the UK press is bigoted, specifically the tabloids. Is that what you mean? He goes, no, the UK is bigoted. And I said, I completely disagree. But unfortunately, if the source of information is inherently corrupt or racist or biased, then that filters out to the rest of society.
Black people are about 3.5% of the population. They're about 0.2% of the journalists. So people who come up with these headlines, they are doing so in a newsroom that's almost entirely white. And they get to decide whether something has crossed a line of being racist.
I want to go to on-screen representation because it's interesting. On screen, not including GB News, but approximately there's about 20% representation of different ethnicities, i.e. non-Caucasian, which is larger than the number of minority ethnic population in Britain, although they might not have the leading roles, interestingly. But behind the screens, we do much, much less well. So it is what I call, out there parading for the public.
But that's good. But that's good because it's the public. It's the public that actually see.
But those 20% are because they're good and they're capable, not because they're tokenistic. Right, and that's so important.
So you're saying they're only good at being people from different ethnicities are only good at being actors and presenters. They're not good at being chairpeople, CEOs, managers. In journalism, it's particularly bad for it. Press journalism, old school Fleet Street stuff. Something like 2% of journalists are from minority ethnic backgrounds, which explains some of the useless, clumsy language when Meghan first arrived on the scene. Do you remember she had exotic DNA and this nonsense that would have never been written if you'd had properly diverse officers?
It is not the job of black people and ethnic minorities to educate white people on racism that is perpetrated by white people. Right. White folks need to go educate themselves on the racism they perpetrate.
I do think it lifts the lid on press practices. And one of the things you can tell about where power is truly wielded in this country is the fact that we were supposed to have Leveson Part 2 looking at press practices, how they collaborate with the police. And I got kicked into the long grass because no politician wants to get on the wrong side of Rupert Murdoch.
I mean, I've been saying for a long time that the media's reporting of the monarchy is stuck in the 1950s, this kind of deferential lack of critique, lack of partiality. I mean, it's bizarre, really. Lack of impartiality. It's entirely partial and reverential. So I think in that, and the idea that, you know, the media is a kind of PR arm of the royal family, that too is true.
It suggests people you might want to follow urge someone who had viewed one hate account or message to follow several others. These 83 accounts were responsible for 70% of the negative content targeted on the couple. One account posted 111,031 messages about them. Bot Sentinel reckons there are 264 single-purpose hate accounts solely targeting Harry and Meghan. To the innocent bystander, it looks like the whole world hates Harry and Meghan. No, there we are. But this is not just ordinary, spontaneous or altruistic hatred. It is deliberate and coordinated. It uses social media recommender systems to amplify hatred. Like all clickbait, it uses hatred to entice people to follow a link to an article on another client webpage where money is to be made, which is how it knowingly monetizes hatred, as shown by the network of YouTube channels that notched up 497 million views and $3.48 million on the back of hateful and inaccurate material about Meghan alone. 3 YouTube channels, Yankee Wally, Murky Meg, and according to Taz, had more than 70 million views and earned $494,730, all on the back of hatred of Meghan. The same goes for UK newspapers that fill their online sites with hateful Meghan material. It is becoming their richest clickbait scene, apart perhaps from the sidebar of shame on Mail Online. It drives viewing and earns advertising income, which is why so many British opinion writers pen so much drivel about the couple, not because the story matters, it doesn't, not because the writer genuinely cares about it, they don't, but because it makes money. That is not journalism. It's a perversion of journalism. And yet again, it means that the press see other people's lives as commodities to be traded.
We know through polling that, for instance, the Sussexes poll highest amongst youngsters under 25-year-olds. It is the dinosaurs screaming. Because
the Harry and Meghan story is a huge, much bigger problem for the monarchy than the monarchy recognises. Monarchy survives is not because everybody's a wild fan of the monarchy, but because people don't care very much one way or the other. In order to create change, you need people to really care enough to do that. Where a lot of people who hadn't cared one way or the other who were enthused by the arrival of Meghan in the royal ranks.
Absolutely different group of people. You have the Sussex squad online, you have people turning up to the wedding. The monarchy tried to modernise themselves, and people, I remember seeing that wedding, thought that's cool. That's
exactly. So it was younger people, it was demographics that they didn't usually reach. It was populations of colour.
Meghan and Harry said really resonated with me. It resonated with me because they were describing my life. They were describing that tightrope that I have to walk every single day when I leave my house.
And I feel like we kind of saw this coming, and it's heartbreaking to see a woman, you know, go through that, go through suicidal thoughts. And I think, again, what really hit me was when she said that she didn't want them to know that she was going through that. And I think we as Black women, we don't want them to see us break. I'm a big believer of those who understand racism exists. They may not look like us, but they know. It's those people defending Meghan who aren't Black, but they know that it does exist. But there's a whole subset of the UK community that just don't want to know, that don't want to believe it, that don't care.
So I was tearful yesterday when I watched Meghan, and yes, there was a hanging of the shoulders. But then, you know, after thinking about that courageous step that they both took to air their story, I felt that that was another step forward.
I mean, James, what I would do if one of my family, one of my siblings, has spent the last few years trashing the family on television, trash my wife, trash my dad's wife, trash my dad, trash my sister, and so on, I would dismember them, one limb at a time. And after I'd severed all their limbs, I would probably incinerate them.
I think that's disgusting.
I know, but that's what I do.
We're talking about King Charles, who has cancer right now.
How can you be surprised? I'm the devil. That's
What are
what
you
devils
talking
do.
about, Piers?
That's what devils do. Here's my point. I mean metaphorically, right? What I mean is I would be utterly
Why is this a
enraged.
conversation about Harry, who wrote a book a while ago that's like being read by everyone? Like, who cares now?
Well, it's not just a book, is it?
Why are we talking about this?
He wrote, well, because he's just flown in to see his father.
Yeah, because his dad
and his
is
own brother,
unwell.
his own brother refused to see him.
And now you're doing a segment on bashing Harry. Like, of course he doesn't want to stay in the
defend
UK.
him then.
Well, of course he doesn't want to stay in the UK whilst you're bashing him on TV.
Oh, you think he cares
I'd
what
be
I have
straight
to
out
say?
here as well.
Well,
yes,
go on, you defend him.
absolutely.
Defend him.
I think he's brilliant. I think he's been honest with his journey.
Honest?
In
He's
the royal
lied through
family.
his back teeth.
No, he hasn't.
Yes, he has.
What are the
Repeatedly.
lies? List them. What are the
Repeated lies.
Which ones?
He's been exposed.
He certainly wasn't lying in that court case.
Which court? Well, the mirror court case.
Right, exactly.
Well, okay. You want to talk about that?
Not really, but
Okay,
I'm just
well,
letting
then
you
move
know
on.
that actually a lot of the things you're saying aren't true. He's not lying.
No,
You can't
no.
just say he's a liar.
He and
That's
his
not
wife
true.
accused the royal family of being racist. That was a lie. There's no evidence for it. They've never produced any evidence for it. Caused enormous damage to the royal family. I think it's despicable. Harry stayed in a hotel on this trip. I suggest next time, given you're such a fan, he comes and stays with you. It
He
sounds
is
like-
more than welcome.
Of course he is.
And also Meghan, I will roll out a red carpet.
Oh, of course you would.
Oh,
yeah,
I'll
of course.
take Meghan.
All hypocrites
Yeah.
stick together.
You know, there's one thing that I love and admire and respect about Harry and Meghan. How angry they make Piers Morgan. And the Daily Mail. The Daily Mail hate her. Hate her. Don't know why they hate that black woman. You know what I've noticed? The more they hate Meghan, the more they love Kate. It's like Kate can do no wrong. Kate could murder a disabled panda cub. The whole thing caught on camera. Kate just kicking the shit out of this tiny, defenseless, fluffy, 6-month-old, wheelchair-bound cub. Daily Mail front page, caring Kate gets panda to heaven.
Just look at how they treated Meghan Markle, for example. That was an opportunity for the royal family to reinvent itself, to modernise itself, to bring somebody in from the outside, a woman of colour, and look how she was treated, not just by the press, but actually by members of the royal family and by senior advisors in the palace. That incident really cast shame over the royal family and cast a bit of a stain over this country.
But when it comes to this generation in particular, young people are interested in the values of fairness and in the values of representation. Whatever way you slice it, the monarchy is neither a fair nor a representative institution. And for the royal family to not be able to keep the first royal of colour inside the tent really does fly in the face of what a lot of Generation Z and millennials value, which is diversity, inclusion, and a degree of social equality.
I think there's a younger generation of women, particularly a lot of younger women of colour, who look at Meghan Markle and they have never seen a woman like her. They have never seen a woman who's had the guts and the confidence and the audacity and the balls to stand up to the media, to stand up to the establishment, to literally take on the biggest trolls on the planet and say, enough, and I am pushing back, and I'm not going to be the good girl. I'm not going to just go away and shut up. I'm not going to play by the rules. I'm taking you on at your own game. There's a lot of young women who look that has been incredibly empowering. And I think this documentary, even though people will hate her for it, there'll be a lot of criticism for it, I think this makes her an even bigger and an even more significant cultural figure in modern popular history.
They gave the finger to Fleet Street. And Fleet Street won't accept that. Because when you've got Fleet Street in your blood, when you've got ink in your blood, any attempt to lead your life as if we're not in charge is greeted with absolute fury. Look at what happens if you dare to stand up to the British tabloid media. They will kick you round the room until you're bruised and bloodied, and quite possibly, in the case of the Duchess of Sussex, of course, contemplating the worst possible way out of that level of abuse and unkindness. Open season. You can do whatever the hell you want with her. You can write what you want, you can say what you want, you can print what you want, you can broadcast whatever you want about her. I know what you're thinking. Didn't exactly end well, where we gave you the same free pass on Harry's mum. But hey-ho, the world has turned. That memory has faded a bit. So open season on Meghan Markle. Write what you want, say what you want, do what you want. So they did. The palace, for good or for ill, did not come in on behalf of Prince Harry and his wife and demand that the vampires of Fleet Street stop sucking their blood every morning.
I felt completely helpless. I thought my family would help, but every single ask, request, warning, whatever it is, just got met with total silence or total neglect. There was no option to leave. Eventually, when I made that decision for my family, I was still told, you can't do this. I was like, well, how bad does it have to get until I am allowed to do this?
This woman was abused, and so was he. Was coming to use the institution to try and do all the things that a batterer would do, like, oh, here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut off the money. We're going to not leave you security. We're going to do all those things to make you comply and come back. And for the both of them to have the wherewithal to say, I don't give a damn if it's the palace. I'm out of here. I applauded that.
If my wife had been treated like his wife has been treated, all bets would be off. If I had gone to my brother and asked him to help me protect my wife from the kind of abuse that Meghan Markle has been exposed to, and that abuse seeps from mainstream media to social media and drips into every corner of Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, and my brother had turned around to me and said, yeah, well, there it is. But I'd be declaring war. If this was 400 years ago, I'd be raising a flag on Hounslow Heath and contemplating a coup for the crown. But those days are over. The prize today is just PR. The prize today is public image. It's been done because of a deal, whether implicit or explicit, between the royal family and the Fourth Estate, the media. That relationship is not parasitic, as I used to think. It's symbiotic. And yet they carried on. They refused to buckle.
At a certain point, no matter how difficult it is, if you know the difference between right and wrong, you must stand up for what's right, and that's what I'm doing.
So they decided to do everything their own way. They decided to rewrite their own rule book and live entirely by that. They decided that they would not dance to anybody's tune but their own. They are not perfect. They are not infallible. Some of the stuff they do is a little bit silly, but my goodness me, they're brave. Imagine that. Imagine growing up in that goldfish bowl and deciding that you're going to smash the glass and see whether or not you can survive. That's what they can never be forgiven for. And nobody understands this better than the Fleet Street machine that needs the royal family just as much as the royal family needs the Fleet Street machine.
Feeling trapped and feeling controlled through fear, both by the media and by the system itself. But certainly now, I will never be bullied into silence. After everything that had happened to my mum, and to now be put in a position of losing another woman in my life, with a baby inside of her, our baby, history was repeating itself. My mother was chased to her death while she was in a relationship with someone that wasn't white. And now look what's happened. You want to talk about history repeating itself? They're not going to stop until she dies. It's incredibly triggering to potentially lose another woman in my life. Like, the list is growing. And it all comes back to the same people, the same business model, the same industry. Because my father used to say to me when I was younger, he used to say to both William and I, well, it was like that for me, so it's going to be like that for you. That doesn't make sense. Just because you suffered, that doesn't mean that your kids have to suffer. In fact, quite the opposite. If you suffered, do everything you can to make sure that whatever experiences negative experiences that you had, that you can make it right for your kids. I will always protect my family, and now I have a family to protect. So everything that she went through and what happened to her is incredibly raw every single day, and that's not me being paranoid. That's just me not wanting a repeat of the past. And if anybody else knew what I knew, be it a father, be it a husband, be it anyone, you'd probably be doing exactly what I'm doing as well. I will not be bullied into playing a game that killed my mum.
It's just envy, isn't it? The whole point of the attacks upon Prince Harry and his wife, whether they're coming from within the palace, on the record, off the record, nowhere near the record, or whether it's coming from Fleet Street, is because they're simply better at everything. They're better at PR, they're more media savvy, they're more articulate, they're more empathetic, crucially they're more accomplished. Look at their careers, compare their careers. They're more accomplished and they're more attractive. But the real reason for the hatred, the viciousness, and this astonishing level of abuse is because they make a complete mockery of royalty itself. The idea that he gets the top job and he sits in the sidecar for the rest of his life is absolutely absurd. But we can never ever admit that because it shakes the very foundations of the royal family.
You know, there is a complete identity crisis with the royal family. You know, is it a public institution? Is it a brand? Is it a private family? And we have to work out what it really is. And when it comes to being a public institution, then the transparency and the accountability should be the same as any other. If it's going to be a brand, then let's be clear that we're peddling a myth, an image, a brand, and we don't want to dig under the bonnet of that too much. If they want to be a private family, then you have to step out of you have to step off the stage, because you can't kind of have it all ways. And I sort of come back to this brand idea, which I think, you know, to Tom's point about what is the value of the royal family. If you're going to be a brand ambassador for £65 billion, you know, brand, then you've got to live, as any brand does, with a sort of authenticity and integrity. And I think one of the things that really frustrates me is the mythologizing of the royal family, the fact that there is a sort of fairy tale peddled, which bears no relation to reality, you know, and that we have this sort of, as I called it in the chat, this sort of institutionalized deference that doesn't allow us to ask the right questions and, more importantly, get the right answers. So when it comes to, you know, the sort of the huge interest in Harry and William, we know that there's a whole side of that story that has not been reported by the British media. We know that there are rumours of alleged infidelity on William's part that the UK press just will not touch. And frankly, you know, if Harry has buggered off to Santa Barbara, having been on the receiving end of such extraordinary press coverage, while his brother has not received a single critical article in the UK,
Can you see a day when you would return as a full-time member of the royal family?
No. It's a scenario where they're back in England and they're back in royal life. I can't envisage a situation where they're back, as it were, as part of the sort of royal working unit, but I could certainly see it becoming a kind of normal thing for them to keep coming back.
It's impossible not to feel emotional investment as a black British person watching Meghan enter this institution and become this icon, this figure that we all had these high hopes for. Part of what made the inability of the palace to defend Meghan an even bigger disaster is at the centre of the argument for the monarchy in this country is the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth is 2.5 billion, mainly black and brown people. Here was a woman who just looked like most of the people in the Commonwealth. And they somehow, for some reason, couldn't find the capacity to protect her, to represent her, to stand by her, to take on vested power in her name, to fight for her.
With a rejection of him and her really made us, look into it with faces like this. We still haven't quite recovered. You would think the relationship would have improved. But that confession about the color of Archie's skin, what might it be? That was a big blow. That was a punch in the solar plexus. That really stunned us and stunned all the people in the Commonwealth. Stunned us. Still does.
I don't like the way they've treated Meghan Markle. I completely do not like that. I don't like the way they have treated their own son, Prince Harry. And I've seen, King Charles should apologize. He should start by apologizing, dealing with the matters of his own family first. How can he cut off his own child like that? I don't like the way they've dealt, especially with that black woman. They have, in certain ways, first of all, I started by saying I love the royal family, I love what they represent, but we are living in a different world. For me, the day they will make peace with their son, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, maybe I'll look at them differently. Right now, something just seems to have broken. Something is broken. Like I no longer feel the excitement.
And I love Prince Harry, and Prince Harry should be king. He should be king, Prince Harry, not William. William and all of them in there, Camilla is the wicked witch of the devil himself, because she is part of why Princess Diana is not here. I do not like them. I am from the islands, and we don't need them in the Caribbean. Get lost. Demolish the monarchy. This is 2023, okay? And Charles is the monster, not Harry. Harry is no monster, not Meghan. They are evil people. They are not nice. Behind the wall, we all are one human being, and behind that wall there are no difference with me and you and any other Brits. Give the people back the money. They are just welfare recipients, living off the taxpayers of the British people. And the British people are stupid, supporting that nonsense monarchy.
You watched it on this side of the Atlantic, as did I, and I was struck by the fact that the reaction to Harry and Meghan was almost universally sympathetic. I don't think it's going to be that way necessarily in the UK, but there's a real transatlantic difference here, it seems.
There is a very big difference, and I think it's from a perception of snobbery that Meghan wasn't good enough, and also it's sort of she wasn't one of us, and it's the class thing, and that's reared its head in other relationships. If you remember with Kate Middleton as well, not only she wasn't good enough, she was middle class, she wasn't of proper breeding and what have you, but with Meghan there's also the race thing here, and a lot of things I think that you might agree on this, a lot of things that the tabloids have got away with over the years in the UK, they would not publish those things here. He thinks of America being very, very forward, but in many ways they're more conservative than the Brits. It's a weird juxtaposition.
Most of the world has really decided what their feelings were about the monarchy and their collusion with the British media. Back when you hunted and caused the death of Princess Di, you might remember that Princess Diana was the people's princess. That means that is the world stage. It means that people like myself, who aren't a part of the bubble of the monarchy and the British media, can't be manipulated into whatever agenda that the media wants to put out there. So when Harry and Meghan decided to come to the U.S., yes, absolutely, we opened our arms and welcome them in. Why? Because y'all are tripping. Now, the bottom line is it's giving very much misogynoir, it's giving very much institutionalized racism, and it's giving very much anti-Loving v. Virginia, which in this country has been codified. Yes, it was codified the day before yesterday.
Interracial
but
marriages!
It is codified. So when this 6-part documentary drops on Netflix, we will all be watching, we will be taking notes, because it turns out that there are 2 parts to every story, and the British media has gone out of their way to make sure that Harry and Meghan was the minority voice of their very own story. So yes, we want to hear exactly what they're going to say, because it's interesting, and because also it's their truth and it's their lives. So now that the British media has decided that they're going to drop all of these headlines and be salacious, saying that Harry and Meghan are coming after the monarchy, it's giving very much projection, and it's smothered in hypocrisy, and most of us do not like that, and that's why you are where you are right now.
Well done. Now, really quickly, Tori, Al, there's not much more to say after what Erica said, but I just want to hear, why do you think the British media, the tabloid media, is so much more racist, ruthless than here in America? They came to America to escape it, but why, in your opinion?
I'll tell you a fact that I learned. The castle, Buckingham Palace, would not allow any person of color or foreigner to be in any clerical position at all until the late 1960s. That sets a tone for blatant racism. They are the other, and she is an American divorcee actress who happens to be black. X from them. It's just racism. It's colonialism and it's racism.
But I think it's yes that, but it's deeper than that, because you're also forgetting that this woman of color was allowed, in their words, to come into and be a royal, and she walked away from it.
Yes.
That was the atomic bomb
she left
here.
them.
What this woman of color did was she unknowingly dismantled this mental the entire basis of a lot of people's lives. Is like the highest thing is the royals, and if she walks away from it, well, then what does that say about what you've dedicated your life to?
Very well said.
Said. All three. A lot of people want to say, like, this is a UK issue. No, it's not. They over here now.
Yeah.
And we're looking at this. It's very global. You know, the Commonwealth has 8.5 billion people in it, mostly black and brown people, who identify with Meghan. So when you are saying these things about her, just understand that this Commonwealth that you are trying so hard to retain, because that is going to be the bottom line of not only your infrastructure, but also just plain economics.
Just money,
alone. And that these tiny voices that are making the rest of the UK look as though they are misogynistic and against black women and coming have volatile acts against women, everybody's looking over there like, what is wrong? What is wrong with you?
That's why when they go on those ambassadorships, remember we were covering that they were super awkward, because the people that were receiving them in these countries in which are under their foot, they were all like, yeah, what are you doing here? They're always tense and awkward because they don't want them there. They stole all their stuff. They took all their wealth over the last couple of years, 100 years. And this is all coming to an head.
But I do want to say that out of the journalists, 0.02% are black out of every journalist in the UK. And I want to acknowledge that all of the women and men who are speaking out right now, we hear you and are attempting to amplify your message as well, because we realize that y'all haven't just started talking about this. So we stand with you and we support you because we know that you are tired and this is exhausting.
And a Dutch version of the book suddenly named Charles and Kate as the people who supposedly made these racist remarks. Everyone in Britain went, oh, don't be so ridiculous, right? They're the last 2 people on earth who'd ever be racist or say something of the negative context about a skin color of a baby. And I would ask you guys an interesting question, which I asked at the time. to huge furore again. But when you have a white father, Meghan's father's white, and a black mother, and you're about to have a baby as the daughter, is it not a common conversation where someone might say, oh, by the way, what colour might the baby be? Is that not a perfectly normal question to ask when you have one white parent, one black parent? I would say it is.
You know who you should have on your show to have this discussion? A great scholar in America named Dr. Umar Johnson.
Right.
You should have.
But what do you guys think? Well, what do you guys think? Honestly,
I've never heard that conversation.
But do you know people in that position?
No, I've never heard them.
Okay,
say
so
what.
I do, right?
Yeah.
I know in Britain.
I haven't. I'm not
in
saying
Britain.
it
It's pretty common, right? You have a lot of mixed race parents, and then you have a child, and they all came out and said, "Well, yeah, we've had that conversation." So the question then becomes not the question if that was what was said. We still don't know.
Right.
It becomes what was the intonation of the question? Was there a negative concern element to that question? Well, I hope it isn't going to be too dark. Now, nobody believes Charles or Kate would have ever said anything like that.
Why do you think that there is a big difference between the US and the UK as to how they see racism? Now, in America, it's accepted that there's racism. People won't go toe-to-toe, and I've been on many shows, they won't go toe-to-toe with you to say this country is not racist. They either say it is because, or black people should get over it, or it's still the land of opportunity, you can move on from it. There's no argument about racism. In the UK, for instance, though, it's very different. People go berserk if you talk about racism. We're not racist. It's just a few people there. Now, big differences in the US, people are surrounded by monuments to people who were enslaved. It's, part of their heritage. They know it, they feel it, they see it, they can't deny it. Remember, in the UK, slavery happened offshore in different places. So you've got to understand that history. So, the US, I'm always asked about this. They don't understand so many things about Britain. They really don't. Because no one, for instance, in the US is going to ask a black person, where are you really from? You're a black American, and I might not like you, and I might wish you weren't here, but hell, I've got to put up with the fact you're a black American. So there's a lot of misunderstanding.
Pay attention. This is really important. It's only a 3-minute read, and I'll share it with you now because I felt pennies dropping as never before when I read this. So imagine a society founded on a class structure with the brackets white, close brackets, and the brackets are important, British royal family at the top as determined by birth and by blood, right? Don't have to imagine it. That's what we've got. It's not a matter of opinion, that's a matter of historical fact. A biracial woman enters the top of the pyramid by marriage, negating both the birth and blood requirements society had previously been told were preconditions. Because she lacks those prerequisites, she's considered unworthy. Because she's proud of her own heritage and regards herself as equal to others at the top of the pyramid, she's considered ungrateful. The town criers called out from the lower tiers of the pyramid, I've never met her, but I look at her and I don't think I'd like you in real life, said one. We Brits prefer true royalty to fashion royalty, proclaimed another. These are direct quotes from prominent columnists and commentators. Shouts of she just doesn't speak our language came whistling on the wind. But at the top of the pyramid, the cries were met with silence. So she's under attack in some fairly horrible ways, and they expected perhaps to get some support and protection from the boss or even the brother. Were they too far away from it? Were they too disconcerted to know what to reply? Or did they use the cacophony from below to muffle the echo of their own whispers as they murmured the same things? The loudest gossip monger was impossible to ignore as he oafishly admonished her to go back to America. After years of being told that she was unworthy and ungrateful, the newlywed took the crier's advice and returned from whence she came. Despite one tattler's audacious cautions not to force her husband to, and she quotes again, choose between you and us, he did in fact choose his wife, just as he did the day he married her, much to their chagrin. Ironically, though society spurned her placement at the top of the pyramid, when she leaves with her husband, for some, it calls into question whether the pyramid's peak is still something to aspire to. God, this is good. Whether those at the top are truly elite. Whether blood and birth really are prerequisites. Their departure is considered a rejection of the pyramid as a construct, thus a rejection of the society itself. For others, it was a necessary repudiation and confirmed that just as they suspected, she was NOCD, which translates as not our class, dear. And final paragraph. Still, that wasn't enough. For society to maintain order, she must be reclassified and her elite status conferred by marriage removed. But the society is trapped in a conundrum. Her husband and their children are at the top of the pyramid by birth and by blood. Now, I'd remind you, this was written before today's announcements about patronages and honorary military appointments being removed from the Duke and Duchess. Her husband and their children are at the top of the pyramid by birth and by blood. Removing titles, military honours and patronages won't remove her from the top of the pyramid. The only thing that will reclassify her is to remove her from her husband. And the society has been working diligently, though unsuccessfully, to that end since the day they learned that Harry and Meghan were a couple. It seems to me to be the most insightful, informed and plausible explanation of matters royal that I have ever read in my life. I have never read anything even half as good as that, partly because it makes absolutely perfect sense, partly because it retrospectively explains so many things that I have been baffled and confused by. Indeed, it was inspired, that little piece, by the phone-in we did on Monday, asking what on earth is it that she's supposed to have done wrong?
I follow 4 of the stars of Suits on Twitter. Yeah. Within 5 minutes, I got this direct message from Meghan Markle. Hey, I'm a big fan, and so excited you're following me. And this is
she said to you.
That was about 3 years ago, and I replied, and then she began sending me early copies of Suits episodes.
Right.
She'd email me from places like Rwanda. I thought we had a good sort of friendship building. She then said, "I'm coming to London to watch the tennis with Serena Williams.
Yeah.
Would you like to meet up for a drink?" I said, "Come to my local pub, I'm an Irishman. Come to my pub." Nobody knew who she was, but she walked in. I remember the locals, right? All these old guys like this, drinking their pints, and in walks Meghan Markle like $1 million.
Very intelligent, I thought, very smart, very charming, very warm, very direct with eye contact. She was a really nice person.
They didn't know who she was, but they thought she's something special. Yeah. We had 2 hours in the pub. She had a couple of dirty martinis, had a couple of pints. We got on brilliantly.
And she seemed to me to have a sense about her of being concerned about issues, concerned about the planet, the environment, women's rights. She's got that campaigning streak too. But I really liked her.
And then I put her in a cab, and it turned out to be a cab that took her to a party where she met Prince Harry. And that was the last I ever heard from Meghan Markle. And I have never heard from her again. Ghosted me, Ryan. Meghan Markle ghosted me. This is why it hurts. No, I really liked her.
But I get it, because Harry, the moment it became serious, there's no way Harry wants Meghan Markle anywhere near media people. Just period.
Understand that you don't like Meghan Markle. You've made it so clear a number of times on this programme. A number of times. And I understand that you've got a personal relationship with Meghan Markle, or had one, and she cut you off. She's entitled to cut you off if she wants to. Has she said anything about you since she cut you off? I don't think she has, but yet you continue to trash her.
Okay, I'm done with this.
No.
Sorry, no. Sorry.
So, do you know what? That's pathetic.
You can trash me, maybe not mine.
No.
See you later.
I'm being...
Sorry.
I'm sorry, but Piers spouts off on a regular basis, and we all have to sit there and listen. 6:30 to 7 o'clock yesterday was incredibly hard to watch.
Later, the 55-year-old journalist took to Twitter to respond to people who were calling him out for being a hypocrite after years of digging into guests and co-presenters on the show. He adds that he went for a little cool down, but later came back to have a discussion.
I just want you also to be aware of the power of your words. And it's important for me and you to have this conversation.
Right, but let's just not make it personal. It's fine.
It's not...
You made it personal. Well, let's move on.
You know what? It's hard because, Alex, you know what? We talk personally about, you know, people on this show, and we give our opinions on them, don't we? So actually, sometimes it does come back at you. We have to be... You know,
it's fine. It's just the way it was done. We can disagree about that.
In a heated on-air exchange, ITV confirmed via a statement on their website that Piers is leaving Good Morning Britain.
Piers Morgan is here. Hey, everyone, say what you like about Piers Morgan.
Inside the courtroom behind me here, a judge ruled that phone hacking had been, in his words, extensive at Mirror Group newspapers between 2006 and 2011, and that Prince Harry had been a victim, awarding him over £140,000 in damages. On the verdict, Prince Harry said he had been vindicated and that it was affirming. From California to court, Prince Harry sent these words for his lawyer, David Sherborne, to deliver.
This case is not just about hacking. It is about a systemic practice of unlawful and appalling behaviour. The court has found that Mirror Group's principal board directors, their legal department, senior executives and editors such as Piers Morgan clearly knew about or were involved in these illegal activities.
Speaking of Piers Morgan, if you cast your mind back to the 90s and noughties when he was editor of the Daily Mirror, the judge's ruling that he did know about phone hacking is significant. It's something the now presenter has repeatedly denied, including under oath at the Leveson inquiry.
I swear by Almighty God that the evidence which I shall give shall be...
It is clear Mirror Group's persistent attempt to suggest that my claim was, to quote their counsel, fantastical, in the realms of total speculation, and there was simply no evidence at all to suggest I was hacked. Zilch, zero, nil, nada, niente, absolutely nothing. All of that was total nonsense.
Today, a judge in the High Court in London has ruled on various cases, including Prince Harry's claim against Mirror Group newspapers, where I was an editor until 2004. The judgment finds there is just one article relating to the Prince, published in the Daily Mirror during my entire 9-year tenure as editor, that he thinks may have involved some
unlawful information gathering. To be clear, I had then, and still have, zero knowledge of how that particular story was gathered. All his other claims against the Daily Mirror under my leadership were rejected. With regard to the judge's other references to me in his judgment, I also want to reiterate, as I've consistently said for many years now, I've never hacked a phone or told anybody else to hack a phone, and nobody has produced any actual evidence to prove that I did. I wasn't called as a witness, and it's important for people to know this, by either side in the case, nor was I asked to provide any statement. I would have very happily agreed to do either or both of those things had I been asked. Nor did I have a single conversation with any of the Mirror Group lawyers throughout the entire legal process. So I wasn't able to respond to the many false allegations that were spewed about me in court by all foes of mine with an axe to grind, most of which inexplicably were not even challenged in my absence by the Mirror Group counsel. But I note the judge appears to have believed the evidence of Omid Scobie, who lied about me in his new book, and he lied about me in court, and the whole world now knows him to be a deluded fantasist. And he believed the evidence of Alistair Campbell, another proven liar who spun this country into an illegal war. Finally, I want to say this. Prince Harry's outrage at media intrusion into the private lives of the royal family is only matched by his own ruthless, greedy, and hypocritical enthusiasm for doing it himself. He talked today about the appalling behaviour of the press. But this is a guy who's repeatedly trashed his family in public for hundreds of millions of dollars, even as two of its most senior and respected members were dying, his grandparents. It's hard to imagine, frankly, more appalling behaviour than that. As for him saying this is a good day for truth, the Duke has been repeatedly exposed in recent years as someone who wouldn't know the truth if it slapped him around his California tanned face. He demands accountability for the press, but refuses to accept any for himself for smearing the royal family, his own family, as a bunch of callous racists without producing a shred of proof to support those disgraceful claims. He also says he's on a mission to reform the media when it's become clear his real mission, along with his wife, is to destroy the British monarchy. And I will continue to do whatever I can to stop them.
Stories that came out because of mobile phones. When they first came out, mobile phones, journalists found out that if the celebrity hadn't changed their PIN code,
you can access their voicemail.
You can access their voicemail just by tapping a number. Now, are you really telling me that journalists aren't going to do that?
Yeah.
If they know they can ring up Charlotte Church's mobile phone, listen to all her messages, right? Now, all you have to do, and I know it's hard because celebrities don't like doing anything for themselves, is actually change your security number.
Yeah, I've changed my security number.
And now you don't have to worry.
Exactly.
David Seymour was group political editor of the Daily Mirror. He told the court he saw Piers Morgan listening to a hacked voicemail. Today, the judge said he accepted that evidence without hesitation.
He pressed the button and played it, and out came Paul McCartney's voice singing And I Love Her. Piers was sort of laughing about it. I can't think of any other explanation other than it was something that had been hacked.
In light of this, we call again for the authorities to uphold the rule of law and to prove that no one is above it. That includes Mr. Morgan, who as editor knew perfectly well what was going on as the judge held. Even his own employer realised it simply could not call him as a witness of truth at the trial. His contempt for the court's ruling and his continued attacks ever since demonstrate why it was so important to obtain a clear and detailed judgment.
Victory for Prince Harry here, no question.
No question at all. No, it was quite brave of him, I think, to take this to court, because there are a lot of other cases that have just been settled and people have just taken the money and run. But I think he wanted the evidence tested, and Mirror Group weren't backing down, so it's quite a significant case. Well, it certainly surprised me that the hacking went on right up to and through the beginning of the Leveson inquiry. I was astonished that was happening. The British press have had so many chances to stop this kind of behaviour, dating back to a report by the Information Commissioner more than 20 years ago. And that then there's the extent of concealment, destruction of evidence and lying that has gone on, not just at Mirror Group, and damages and costs that now total more than £1 billion. So I think there's a unwillingness amongst some influential newspaper groups to face up to the murky truth of the extent of what's been going on. Well, I listened very carefully to what Piers Morgan was saying. He didn't quite deny it. He denied that he had personally hacked a phone. Well, nobody would have thought that an editor would go around hacking phones. And
he said never asked anybody else to hack a phone, that's right.
Yeah, those were his two quite narrow denials, but he didn't deny what I think was completely plain from certainly what the judge thought, which was that this was completely rife within the newsroom, and he must have known about it. I mean, the Mirror Group at the time, the Mirror newspapers were paying hundreds of thousands of pounds to private detectives every year. And it seems to me, and I think to the judge, that it was inconceivable that senior editors could not have known. It's plain that an awful lot of lies have been told to the Leveson inquiry, to the court, to the police, to the regulator, to other journalists, to MPs, to the stock exchange over the years. And of course, Leveson 2, which was supposed to be looking into all of this, was closed down by the Conservative government in 2018. So it's not clear how else the truth of this is going to come out. I guess Prince Harry is doing the work that Leveson 2 would have done, i.e. looking into the evidence that existed of the behaviour within 2, possibly 3 newspaper groups, certainly in Harry's mind. So I think it's actually valuable that the truth comes out.
Let me show you this tangled web. So this is how intertwined everything is. Charles's reputation is in the toilet. He needs to rehab it, and his sons are more popular than he is. And he also wants to rehab his then girlfriend's image so that she can one day marry him and become princess consort, queen, anyway. Mark Bolan works for them from 97 to 02. He is in a long-term relationship with Guy Black, who is the head of the PCC, which is supposed to be regulating the media. Mark Bolan happens to be friends with Rebecca Brooks. They once went on vacation together. How nice. When Rebecca Brooks was at News of the World, she worked under Piers. Piers Morgan, also her friend. Rebecca, Piers, Mark Bolan, all friends. Piers Morgan, also friends with Camilla. And then we have another example of leaking. The Highgrove leak, which was an attempt to use Prince William's popularity to make Camilla look popular, that was leaked. Amanda McManus was the former assistant private secretary to Camilla. She took the fall for the Highgrove leak because she just happened to tell her then husband James McManus about it, who happened to be the executive of Murdoch's news empire, which includes The Sun and the News of the World. Fun fact, Amanda McManus was quietly hired back after all the uproar died down and worked for Camilla until 2021. So just my educated guess, I'm going to say this is a case of yes and. Yes, there were coordinated palace leaks, and there was probably a good amount of unlawful information gathering by certain news outlets.
And the fact that we have now heard that Harry was told that unless he withdrew these allegations that he made, and he named an official, unless he withdrew that allegation, his allowance would be stopped. And when he said he wasn't going to withdraw the allegation. He wanted to pursue the case against the Sun newspaper. His allowance was stopped. So
Meg asked me one night, "You don't think they'll ever pull our security, do you?" Never. Not in this climate of hate, and not after what happened to my mother. Also, not in the wake of my Uncle Andrew. He was embroiled in a shameful scandal, accused of the sexual assault of a young woman, and no one had so much as suggested that he lose his security. Whatever grievances people had against us, sex crimes weren't on the list. February 2020. I scooped Archie from his nap and took him out to the lawn. It was sunny, cold, and we gazed at the water, touched the dry leaves, collected rocks and twigs. I kissed his chubby little cheeks, tickled him, then glanced down at my phone to see a text from the head of our security team, Lloyd. He needed to see me. I carried Archie across the garden and handed him to Meg, then went across the soggy grass to the cottage where Lloyd and the other bodyguards were staying. We sat on a bench, both of us wearing puffer jackets. Waves rolling gently in the background. Lloyd told me that our security was being pulled. He and the whole team had been ordered to evacuate. Surely they can't. I would tend to agree, but they are, he said. So much for the year of transition. The threat level for us, Lloyd said, was still higher than for that of nearly every other royal, equal to that assigned the Queen. And yet the word had come down, and there was to be no arguing. So here we are, I said. The ultimate nightmare. The worst of all worst-case scenarios. Any bad actor in the world would now be able to find us, and it would just be me with a pistol to stop them. Oh wait, no pistol. I'm in Canada. I rang Pa. He wouldn't take my calls. Just then I got a text from Willie. "Can you speak?" Great. I was sure my older brother, after our recent walk in the Sandringham Gardens, would be sympathetic. That he'd step up. He said it was a government decision. Nothing to be done.
I saw my mother be abused for years. I knew the symptoms. I knew what it was like. And Tyler, how dare you compare this to the abuse of your mother? This woman was abused. And so was he. To use the institution to try and do all the things that a batterer would do, like, oh, here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut off the money. We're going to not leave you security. We're going to do all those things to make you comply and come back. And for the both of them to have the wherewithal to say, I don't give a damn if it's the palace. I'm out of here. I applauded that.
Supposed to hate Harry and Meghan again today because the house that the Queen, the late Queen, gifted them and upon which Harry spent £2.3 million of his own money, has now been confiscated by King Charles. So imagine if this was... So imagine if you were writing this story from a point of view of not having had your brain boiled by the fact that Prince Harry fell in love with a woman of colour, right? So just pretend that the world hadn't been redefined, or your attitude to the royal family hadn't been redefined by right-wing media apoplectic about the fact that Prince Harry turned the entire pyramid of privilege in this country on his head by falling in love with an actual woman of colour, right? So, and King Charles was currently much more under attack than his sons, okay? Because he used to be very much under attack for the appalling way in which his late wife and Prince Harry's mum was treated, and indeed the way in which the now Queen was insinuated into public life, having her reputation completely rehabilitated thanks to collusion with newspapers, which was, well, I think seeing her sit down for a meal with Jeremy Clarkson shortly before Jeremy Clarkson wrote that article about Meghan Markle, which reports today suggest might see him deemed surplus to requirements over at ITV, tells you everything you need to know about that, the nature of those relationships and those quid pro quos. So just imagine that Charles was persona non grata with the right-wing media, and that he had betrayed... This is how you'd write it. Charles betrays his late mother's wishes by depriving Harry of a home in England's green and pleasant land. I'd add that bit as well, a little bit of William Blake there. You can almost hear Hubert Parry tuning up in the background. Cruel Charles, callous Charles. I can't quite get the alliteration. Just sounds a tricky. Cheesy doesn't work. So cruel Charles betrays. Cruel Charles betrays late Queen's wishes by stealing Harry's home. Second line. Harry and Meghan denied place in England's green and pleasant land by jealous parent. You see how it would work? Because the Queen gave them a house and he's taken it away. So betraying the late Queen's wishes. That is how... Churlish Charles? Thank you. Churlish Charles? Yeah, Churlish Charles. It's tricky that, because you're weighing up the alliteration with the stronger adjective. So cruel Charles is much stronger. Churlish Charles. Churlish Charles works pretty well, actually. Churlish Charles steals Harry's house. There it is. Churlish Charles steals Harry's house. Second line, late Queen cruelly betrayed by brutal eviction. That's the story, by the way, if you don't know what I'm talking about. Churlish Charles has stolen Harry's house. The late Queen wanted him to have it. He spent 2.3 million quid tarting it up, and money he repaid actually to the public purse after stepping down from royal duties. And lo and behold, Charles has demonstrated his, according to newspapers, he's demonstrated, let me tell you what the Daily Mail have to say about it, because we could always do with a laugh. Charles evicting Harry and Meghan from Frogmore is the act of a king putting his country first. I love showing you how twisted the media is, because if you're not an anorak like me, you probably don't notice. So that headline could easily be exactly the same story. Churlish Charles steals Harry's house. Late Queen betrayed by brutal eviction. That exactly the same story, right? But the invitation to hate in recent years has involved Harry and Meghan, because much of the British media continues to favour a man who paid millions of pounds to a sex trafficking victim who accused him of multiple sex crimes than it does to a man who had the audacity to fall in love with a woman of colour. We've got it. Callous King. Callous King steals Harry's house. That's come from Grant. He's doing a shift as a sub-editor today. Home is better than house. Thank you. We're doing this together. Callous King steals Harry's home. Brutal betrayal of late Queen's wishes. That's it, right? Callous King steals Harry's home. Brutal betrayal of late Queen's wishes. And then you'd have people like Amanda Platel writing articles about how terrible he's trampling upon the grave of his beloved mother. It's so awful. It's just pathetic. It is absolutely, it's the infantilization of a nation. I mean, it's been underway for hundreds of years, but occasionally the absurdity, the hypocrisy, the base corruption of it is so irresistible that it can't help sticking its head above the parapet. Callous King steals Harry's home. There it is. So
investigations, there have been convictions, millions of pounds have been paid out in compensation. Some will wonder, why are you still fighting?
Because that evidence needs to come to the surface.
And then after that, the police can then make their mind up, because this country and the British public deserve better.
Prince Harry's mission stands in stark contrast to his brother's approach. In 2020, Prince William reportedly settled out of court with Newsgroup newspapers for what's been described as a very large sum of money. To what extent do you think that your determination to fight the tabloids destroyed the relationship with your family?
I think there's, that's certainly a central piece to it. But, you know, that's a hard question to answer, because anything I say about my family results in a torrent of abuse from the press. I've made it very clear that this is something that needs to be done. It would be nice if we, did it as a family. I believe that, again, from a service standpoint, and when you're in a public role, that these are the things that we should be doing for the greater good. But I'm doing this. I'm doing this for my reasons.
What do you think of their decision not to fight in the way that you have?
I think everything that's played out has shown people what the truth of the matter is. For me, the mission continues, but it's caused, as you say, part of a rift.
You said in court documents that the Queen, your granny as you call her, supported your claim. What do you think she would think of what you're doing now?
We had many conversations before she passed. This is very much something that she supported. She knew how much this meant to me, and she's very much up there going, see this through to the end, without question.
Question whether there's an element of payback here too?
No, I think I know that it is clear now to everybody that the risk of taking on the press and the risk of such retaliation from them by taking these claims forward is clearly not in my interest to do that. Look at what has happened in the last 4 years to me, my wife and my family, right? So that was a very hard decision for me to make, which is how bad is it going to get?
Some people would say that you taking on these high profile battles, that actually attracts more attention onto you.
There is more than enough attention on me and my wife anyway. They pushed me too far. It got to a point where you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.